across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. You'll be listening to MG all morning. You know that too. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker watching on YouTube. Including, well, whether or not, I suppose really, whether or not you're more or less worried about the economy or immigration, because we've got two big speeches today. One is the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, and she's speaking at a conference with Balkan interior ministers in London, and she's going to be saying that Britain's failure to control its borders is eroding trust in politicians and the credibility of the state. She's going to point out that we have failed to control our borders as people have the right to expect. But the answer, a little bit of a side dig at Nigel Farage, is through international cooperation rather than turning inwards. At the same time, we've also got the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. She's off to the IMF meeting in the US, and she says she's considering both tax rises and spending cuts in the budget. Well, we knew the tax rises were coming in. Frankly, love, you ain't got an option not to make some spending cuts, but will they be the wrong ones? The answer is absolutely yes, they will be. But there are her first comments since being shown the first draft of the Office for Budget Responsibilities report, revealing the size of the black hole she must fill next month. And at the same time, the IMF, International Monetary Fund report yesterday, warning that inflation in Britain will be the highest for any G7 economy this year. The UK is also facing the worst growth in living standards in the West. And although we've got among the highest growth in GDP, the gross domestic product of the country among the G7 countries, if you do it per capita, so per the number of people living in the country, because of our whopping high immigration levels, we go down to the bottom of the G7, because it turns out importing a load of people from the third world with no skills, who can't speak English, who haven't got a chance of getting a decent job and paying their way, makes us poorer. I know, what an extraordinary revelation. One that perhaps you and I may have been able to spot some years ago, but that would have made us a racist bigot. Do try to keep up at the back. Meanwhile, illegal migrants who are awaiting deportation from Britain, so we've actually agreed they are going to be deported. Not actually happened yet, but they're put in an airport or a removal centre near Gatwick Airport. I kid you not. If you read the front page of The Sun, you'll already know this, but they're getting free arts and crafts classes, IT tutorials and even English lessons as part of a £260 million contract with Serco to run that removal centre. Why the hell do they need arts and crafts classes or IT classes, and why are we even giving them English classes if we're booting them out of the country? Give them classes in Farsi or something useful to them when they go home. Quite extraordinary stories today. We're very much back on the domestic scene. There obviously are quite a few international developments as well, particularly over what's happening in Gaza between Hamas and IDF. We'll get to that as well, but very much focusing on what's happening here. And I want to hear from you, very crucially. We've got the Home Secretary talking about Britain failing to control its borders. Nice of them to admit it, really. We've got the Chancellor Rachel Reeves looking at tax rises and spending cuts because Britain is facing low growth and high inflation. I want to know from you, which worries you the most? Is it the economy or is it immigration? Is it both? Tell us why, crucially. Don't just say this one or this one. I want to know why. Tell us your thinking. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. All together now. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one, standard network rate message. Claire Pearsall, I'm delighted to say, joins us as regularly on a Wednesday, former Conservative government advisor, joining us in the studio for the whole show. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Where do we start? Every day, where do we start? I mean, just, you know, even when there's international news, it's just embarrassing for our country. But, I mean, shall we start with Mahmood, the Home Secretary?
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I can't decide what I think about her. She seems to be pretty bright and knows her stuff more than, I mean, some of them go on air and you're like, good grief. I mean, how did you even, you know, move out of kindergarten, let alone, get into government? But, she came on the show and she said a lot of the right things. But then, she's saying a lot of that things about the pro-Palestinian marches. But then she went on one of them. So it's all a bit difficult. But she's speaking at a conference and saying, look, Britain has lost control of its borders. And crucially, she's saying the public rightly expect that the government will be able to determine who enters their country and who must leave. And today in this country, that is not the case. I mean, it's quite a revelation from a Labour Home Secretary, no?
It is. It's not what we've heard previously from Labour Home Secretaries, but it is also stating the obvious. So you think, OK, I give her marks for actually having the guts to go out there and say it, but it's all very well to say these words that we've all been saying for quite some time. What is she going to do about it?
I mean, she hasn't been in the job very long, to be fair, but she was Justice Secretary. She knows about how all this stuff works.
She does.
Well, she says it's international cooperation, and it's not turning it back. So it's not, it's cooperating to, reform the European Convention on Human Rights and how it's interpreted. It's, just simply say, you're no longer allowed to make this ridiculous interpretation that someone's right to have their kid eat the chicken nuggets they want trumps our right for us not to have a foreign criminal in the country. That's not even up for discussion. I don't even know why that takes a nanosecond of conversation. But international cooperation, she says, is the answer, working together rather than just pulling up the drawbridge. I mean, are we going to get that much cooperation? Because frankly, I mean, these other countries are hopeless at controlling their borders as well.
Well, when you look at who we have to negotiate with, the largest continent there being Europe, and they're not having such a great time either. Their borders are pretty porous. The Schengen zone doesn't work very well, which is why
that's going to be over in the next few years.
It has to be. I can't see that's going to continue whatsoever. So who else are you going to negotiate with? Yes, I do agree that you have to work internationally. You can't just shut down conversations. But why is that the main gist of her conversation when you should be looking at what we're doing in the United Kingdom?
And again, the whole point of Brexit what was that we were in control of our own borders.
Absolutely.
I mean, and here's another stat. Migrants make up 1 in every 6 recipients of universal credit. Most recipients of universal credit, yes, although you can get it while working, most do not work. I mean, it's even people who get it when they are working, stop working. It's almost like they can get something for free. They don't carry on working. I know, it's a mystery why they would do that. But almost 1.3 million migrants were given the benefit in July. That's up from 930,000 just 3 years ago. I mean, the Tories have said they're going to bar foreign nationals from claiming universal credit and other benefits. I think Reform have said the same thing, have they not? It's difficult to keep up with the barrage of announcements we've been having.
No, that's true.
But we are, 141 billion pounds for welfare this year. 141 billion quid. 141 billion quid we don't have, by the way, just in case you were wondering. And the bulk of that goes on universal credit because, Ian Douglas-Smith moved it all onto one benefit.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of those 1.3 million migrants are people who are EU citizens.
Yes.
Who are allowed to stay here. But again, this is the thing. We were told, were we not, that we were benefiting from this mass EU immigration. And again, when they did the actual numbers and people were out, can you apply? You've been here a while, but we just need to know you're here so we can register you and then you can continue to stay here after we left. Yeah. And they thought they were about 3 million. They're about 5 million. We didn't even know how many were in the country.
No, and
didn't even know.
No, and that's the real problem. And the majority of them would have been working. So if the majority of them were working, why on earth is the claimant count for universal credit so high? Because surely if they're paying their own way, they don't need to top up with universal credit. We were told that these people were a boon to our society, so that's why we needed to welcome them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I do think we also need to get the correct figures from the DWP, because there is some argument about
Work
the
and
data.
Pensions Department, yeah.
Yeah, there is some argument about the data that comes over. You've got this horrible foreign-born category.
Yeah.
Which is me.
You say horrible. She's not being... it's complicated.
It is complicated. The descriptor is not
but
right.
We would think, well, Claire's British, but you were born
Absolutely,
where?
but I was born in Cyprus.
Yeah.
But I am a British citizen. I've got a British passport. My father was in the army.
You were a British citizen from birth?
Absolutely.
I do think that's crucial. British citizen from birth. Have you had to change your nationality, or are you... I mean,
No, and I haven't. And it was sovereign territory. It was a sovereign base. So I think
it's good to know we could figure out. No, we can't. But no.
I've got nowhere to go, but I wouldn't mind going to Cyprus. It's quite sunny when you look at the weather outside. But I think that we need some correct data to come through. And also, why are people being allowed to claim universal credit?
Again,
I just don't understand.
I just find it... I mean, people say, why shouldn't these people, if they need help... Again, if I moved to America or to France or to, Australia or anywhere else, I moved those countries and I had a job and I was allowed on the basis I was working and I was allowed there legally, and then I lost my job, I couldn't get another job and I needed help. I'm not sure I would expect the taxpayers of any of those countries to fund my life. Maybe you could say, like, you might be entitled for a few months, but maybe you should be saving up some money for the time in between. And if you can't save up money, it's because you're not earning enough money to be able to support yourself. So I'm sorry, thank you very much, but move on. Yeah. I don't understand why people think this is complicated, why they think it's xenophobic or anything. Sorry, you don't get... But this comes down to that fundamental thing. We've got people on the left who think that there's no such thing as borders or the nation state, apart from for Ukraine. They believe in that. It's very confusing. Yeah. And they genuinely seem to believe that, that anyone can live anywhere. Well, good luck with that. How's that working out for you? Because it's not working out very well for us. What about the illegal migrants we're trying to get rid of? Not just the man who made those threats to kill Nigel Farage, sentenced to 5 years, will only serve 18 months. He wants to go home to Afghanistan. Well, bye. I mean, let's all, seriously, we could all club together and pay for your ticket, mate. I'm absolutely willing to put a tenner in for that one. Absolutely outrageous. And it's extraordinary, by the way, how little coverage that has had in the mainstream media. The leader of the political party that is ahead in the polls, a man who has played a major role, probably the most famous politician, probably more famous than Keir Starmer in this country, certainly abroad. Donald Trump couldn't remember Keir Starmer's name at that summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. But the leader of a party who massively influential in terms of Brexit and things, and in terms of Boris's election as well, he's on all the polls, and a new mega poll suggesting he had the biggest majority ever. Tories down to 7 MPs. I mean, look, a lot can change in the next few years, but nevertheless, we are looking like the man who's odds-on favourite to be the next Prime Minister of this country. And a migrant films himself making TikTok videos, threatening to kill him. And it barely makes a down-page story. This is huge. Oh, but it's Joe Cox. And I'm sorry, but I think the anniversary today of David Amos's murder, the Tory MP, who was murdered by Islamist, again, migrant, terrorist. I'm sorry. We have an issue here. It's a matter of luck and time that this man has not murdered Nigel Farage. And people don't seem to, the authorities don't seem to really care. I'm stunned this guy even got charged.
Yes, so was I when I was sort of watching the coverage of the case. And I think it's a testament to Nigel Farage for pushing it to become such an issue and to stand there and talk so honestly about...
turn up at the case.
To turn up at the case and talk honestly about how it affected him. Because I think a lot of people view politicians as a character and say, well, he shouldn't matter, he's probably heard worse. Well, that doesn't matter. Yes,
he has
we've all
24-hour
heard
security.
He does, and he has that for a reason. You're not given security for nothing. So I think that we need
for years, your government, the government you worked in, wouldn't pay for his security. And he had to have, other funders pay for generously funding.
I was going to say, but I think there's a difference
which is
when you're
outrageous
an MP as well.
He was a public figure, and he was being threatened with. He was facing serious, realistic death threats for being a major political figure in this country. I think we should provide. In the same way, I think we should provide security for Prince Harry. I just think we need to provide
you and I differ with that one.
No,
but,
I think we should absolutely.
But I think that
from his wife mostly.
Yes, yes. I mean that goes without saying. But I think that we need to take MP security seriously. I think that we also need to take threats by people who shouldn't be in this country much more seriously. Because you think if that had happened to a Labour MP, we would have heard about this.
Talking about it in the Commons every single day. All threats from some little Egypt Oxford University student. At Balliol College. I mean, seriously, do you know how hard it is to get into PPE at Balliol College, Oxford? I mean, you're literally the elite of the elite. And these people are that stupid. We've been workshopping a chant about putting Zios in the ground. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And again, Met Police messaged me back after I tweeted them, going, we found him. People on Twitter found him. Off you go. Again, someone writes a tweet you don't like, which has not even got anything remotely, threatening in it, and you turn up on the door. Armoured police meeting Graham Linehan off a plane from America. I mean, I'm sorry, at Heathrow Airport. You know where he lives? He lives in Balliol. He lives at Balliol College, Oxford. I can give you the address. It's really easy to find. It's just extraordinary. This guy, we need to make an example of him, and we need to start going after every single one of them. And no, it's not a free speech issue.
No.
Your free speech doesn't extend to making death threats about people. It just doesn't. It's not that complicated. Anyway, if we did manage to deport, I would love to deport that student, frankly. Improve the IQ of the country overnight. If this horrific, nasty little creature who made threats to Nigel Farage, the one with the AK-47 tattooed on his cheek, I mean, we were saying yesterday, unlikely to have got that engineering job that he was hoping for, because they're all engineers and astrophysicists. But he would be having a wonderful time in a deportation centre near Gatwick Airport, at Brook House and Tinsley House, because he could get art and craft classes, IT lessons, and even English lessons. He can play board games and gets free access to the gym. £260 million Serco contract. Brilliant. We're paying for that. Why are we giving people art and craft lessons or even English lessons when we're pushing them out of the country?
I agree with the English lessons. We don't need to teach them English if they're not staying. I've been to Brook House and Tinsley House. They aren't pleasant, OK? Nobody expects them to be. Nobody cares.
I'm sure I've stayed in worst hostels as a student.
I'm not so sure. But I think that the problem is when you are detaining individuals is that you do have to do something to keep them occupied, otherwise they start beating.
Here's a book.
10 shades out of each other and
here's
the
a book.
Individuals.
Here's a book. There's the telly. Off you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to be giving them English lessons. I don't think we need to be giving them education. I think that you need to keep them occupied until you can get them out of here. But what we actually need to do is not having them there for very long.
That's the solution. What do you make of the announcement yesterday that from the 8th of January next year, that migrants coming to the UK will need to speak English to an A-level standard under tougher new rules, applying for skilled worker or scale-up visas for basic. You're basically going to have these standards. I mean, given that half of British students can't manage GCSE English, they can't. Genuinely, they can't. If you look at the stats, I struggle on some days, to be honest with you. I'm wondering, will they enforce that? What is A-level English standard? We'll see.
Well, that always tends to change as well, doesn't it, each year? And any A-level student will tell you that they have done the hardest exams ever, when the year before will say, no, it was...
Absolutely. I do want to touch on the China spy crisis as well, because it is turning into a bit of a crisis. We've got PMQs happening in a couple of hours' time. We will take the beginning of the exchanges with Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, and I'd be very surprised if she doesn't bring two things up. One, Keir Starmer claiming falsely that recognising a Palestinian state helped move the peace process in Gaza. And two, the incredible web of intrigue involving the collapse of this China spy case. Now, it's a difficult story because it does involve sort of a paragraph of explaining before you even get there, doesn't it? But we've got the extraordinary situation where everything that the government claims about why this spy case collapsed has been queried, questioned and debunked by either the current Director of Public Prosecutions, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, bearing in mind our Prime Minister is also one of those, the former head of MI6. We have now got two former Cabinet Secretaries who've led a civil service mutiny, it's been called, after Labour Minister Dan Jarvis in the Commons on Monday publicly named an official, the Deputy National Security Advisor, Matthew Collins, for being responsible for providing evidence about whether or not the country views China as an enemy state for the purposes of this China spy trial against Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, accused of passing sensitive intelligence from inside Parliament to the Chinese Communist Party. They have denied those charges. That case has collapsed. We've had every single claim that's been made has been poo-pooed. The idea that this senior civil servant would have made that decision without the political appointee that is Jonathan Powell, the actual National Security Advisor, having any say-so over it, why he didn't speak to the MI6 plus MI5 or anyone else, or indeed former security ministers, why he didn't rely on public statements that are very clear from all of these organisations stating what a hostile threat China was. But throwing a civil servant under the bus like that has not gone down well. So they've angered the team, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Civil Service, MI6, MI5, and pretty much everyone else. Keir Starmer is on very shaky ground here, isn't he?
He is, and it is a really complicated story. But I think what it boils down to is who knew what, when did they know it, and how many people were involved. Those are the kind of questions that we need to be asked. Dan Jarvis stood up, the Security Minister, in the House of Commons and said, this is, more or less a disgruntled civil servant made his own decisions.
He messed up, basically accusing him of messing up. That's what he basically did. But this guy's very well respected. He
is extremely good, I understand, at what he does, but he's also the Deputy National Security Advisor. So what happened to the Security Advisor? What happened to the top spokes at 5 and 6, and also the ministers? Well, we do believe that this has been done in a bubble.
But this is the thing: the idea that a case that involved national security, alleged spying in Parliament, involving a country which we all know is a hostile nation state, an enemy state. The idea that would not have gone up to the top level. It's like, oh yeah, don't worry, leave it with Matthew. Matthew will deal with it. It's not a problem. Nothing to see here.
Absolutely
it doesn't
ridiculous.
fly. And the government's saying, well, we can't. Of course, we'll publish the evidence. Publish the evidence that you gave. And the government said, well, we can't do that. It's an ongoing case. Once again, the Crown Prosecution Service says, well, it's not an ongoing case. It collapsed because you didn't give us the information. It's your evidence. If you want to publish it, you publish it.
Exactly.
The government was saying they're not going to do it. Now we're told they might. There's no way in the world that Kemi Badenoch isn't going to bring this up. But is this story, for want of a better word, sexy enough to get people's imagination? We all know whether someone either was or was not at a party during lockdown. Someone did or did not pay the tax they were due to pay on a property they bought, when the rest of us have to pay the stamp duty that still exists, unless or until Kemi Badenoch is Prime Minister, and 5 years after that finally abolishes stamp duty. There are stories which we can understand much more clearly. Whether or not the nuances of who said what when in an evidence for a spy trial about the status of our relationship with China, it's a bit more complicated. Do you think this could be a story that could bring down the Prime Minister?
I don't think it's going to bring it down, but I think it's going to add to it, because if you take it in isolation, I think most people would almost shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's a bit complicated and not really that bothered
turn
about
over
it.
the page.
But if you add it to an anti-corruption minister being accused of corruption, a housing minister not paying the correct level of tax, and, private school taxation, all of the other things, the taking of the freebies and all the rest of it, it starts to add up and it looks like somebody cannot do their job.
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, and Angela Rayner getting her £17,000 payoff for leaving as cabinet minister, severance pay. But even though she resigned because of wrongdoing, I'm sorry, you don't pay your full taxes. Sorry, love.
You don't get more.
You don't get more. But also, she railed against ministers who resigned for getting this money. But apparently she'd have got this money. So unless that appears, in a charitable donation publicly made. Sorry, love, you are even more of a hypocrite than we thought you were. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about. And my God, there are so many more to talk about today. Do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. In particular, I would like to know from you, well, we've got, issues of immigration, we've got open borders, uncontrolled borders. Even the Home Secretary admits that. We've got a chancellor over in Washington at the International Monetary Fund meeting today, where basically we've got, some of the worst growth, high inflation in the G7. Which worries you most, though? Is it the economy or is it immigration? Is it both? Tell us, crucially, why. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
Hamas are just shooting their own Palestinian neighbours because they don't like them, because they're part of a different gang. By recognising those bloodthirsty cockroaches, by recognising those ghastly terrorists, actually it almost scuppered the peace deal. Keir Starmer's in Parliament lying about how actually it helped it. Well, it didn't help it. And they accuse people of talking the country down. Well, they're taking the country down, which is a lot worse than talking it down. They're actually taking it down into the gutter, into the sewer, and further down into the depths and the bowels of the earth, from which it may never recover.
It's unbelievable. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. Let's go straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 to have your say on, anything you want to talk about, really. Stuart is in Wigan and wants to have his say. Good morning to you, Stuart.
Morning, Julia.
Morning.
I just want to answer your question, really. Honestly, I'm a wagon driver. I work 50, 60 hours a week. And to be honest, I don't understand what's hard about it for these people in government, the traitors. Because if you get rid of immigration, that should be everybody's biggest problem. You get rid of that, you've obviously got loads more money, haven't you?
There is that. We can see, can't we, from the latest IMF figures, that we've got among the highest growth in the G7, the richest, the biggest nations in the world. And then as soon as you do it per head of the population, because we've had millions extra come to the country in the last few years, we go down to the bottom. It's not making us richer. We know that.
No, well, you can see it yourself every day a week.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. If you get rid of all these freeloaders that are coming over, you know what I mean? Just get rid of them. As far as I'm concerned, get rid of human rights for them, because they don't deserve any, not in this country.
Well, they shouldn't have the same rights as citizens. That's the truth. I don't understand why people think that's the case. But here's the thing. If we completely even let's say we were able to control illegal migration and legal, and we cut it down to reasonable levels, and only people who can actually make a financial contribution and culturally, assimilate and all of that, even if we did that, we would still have, £110 billion a year debt repayment interest. We would still have to pay for our ballooning welfare bill because we've got an ageing population. It wouldn't solve all of our economic problems.
Yeah, but it'd go a long way because we won't be paying for them, would we? We won't be paying for hotels. We won't be giving them money every week. We won't be giving them free clothes. We won't be giving them free driving lessons and all the rest of it. That's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
because they're paying our debt off. We want they're giving them.
Yeah, and the legal migrants, we say, the latest stats showing the number of migrants who are here who we're paying for their, for their universal credit as well. Well, Stuart's very clear. He's a, lorry driver. Immigration is his biggest problem. That's what he's most concerned about rather than the economy because it contributes to our economic problems. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Thanks for that call, Stuart. Let's go to George. He's in Dundee. Hi, George.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well, sir. What do you want to say?
It's immigration. It's immigration, and immigration. You've got to sort out immigration before you can deal with the economy. This is like a treadmill. We wouldn't be able to grow enough to pay for the immigrants that are coming into this country.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's starting to realise that normal working class and middle class people's livelihoods are at risk.
Yep.
Their old age pensions are at risk. People that require welfare, it's at risk. This is like a pack of cards, and it can all come crumbling down if we don't stop immigration.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we were told for years, weren't we, despite all the evidence that people like me were spouting, which was that, no, this is good for us. It's a net improvement of our country. Look, we're getting all this growth. Isn't it great? These people are working, they're improving their lives, but they're also improving ours. And I'm sorry, a huge amount of that was just lies.
Well, we were told for years they were net contributors to the economy. This has been proven to be a lie, a falsehood, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a sort of complaint about a column I wrote in The Sun a little while ago. I mean, I must have spent hours providing all the evidence that my claim that, which is blatantly true, that the majority of migrants to this country are not net contributors and are a drain, are low skilled, low wage and not net contributors. There's guys constantly disputing this. It's like, mate, you haven't got a leg to stand on. The stats, even the official stats, are really, really clear on this.
Julia, what's more important? The economic well-being of our own citizens in our country, or be able to sit in a fancy restaurant or have a kebab every now and again. I know what I'd rather have.
A kebab. I've got to be honest with you, kebab every time. My husband once took me to a kebab takeaway for our anniversary. I'm not even joking. We couldn't be bothered to go out. Went, do you know what I really want? I said, I'd love a kebab from that place up the road. So we had a bottle of champagne and a kebab, and he said, this is why I married you. I'm a classy bird. George, great call. Thank you very much, Incy. Okay, are we all just hungry for kebab now? Claire, we are, aren't we? I'm not joking. He turns to my husband. I've never seen a look of love like that. This is why I married you.
Oh, I just think
like,
I've got
chili sauce down the chin. 10:33 is the time. On that note, get in touch. Your favourite takeaway? No, on your anniversary. Let's get in touch with us. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, we're going to talk to James Bull from the New World. Not the New European anymore. I still love the fact they changed their name. They managed to get that memo at least. But I wonder which he worries about, if either. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:36. Claire and I have just spent the last couple of minutes talking about our favourite takeaways. We've gone fish and chips at the moment, haven't we? We're in fish and chip mode.
Yep.
Right, I know what's for dinner tonight. There we go. Anyway, let's get to my next guest, James Ball, who's political editor at the New World. Favourite takeaway, James?
I'm a chicken shop guy, Julia.
Oh, chicken! He's a chicken shop boy. I would not have had you down as a chicken shop boy, but there we learned.
Did you have me down as a vegan?
Probably. Hummus. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would have thought quinoa and hummus would be your two favourites, you know. But there, you've gone up in the estimation.
I'm delighted.
Bit of good animal protein in your diet. That's what you need to. James, let's talk about where we are today, because I'll put the question to you. I'm putting to our audience. You know, are you more concerned about the economy or immigration, given these two? You know, Chancellor Rachel Reeves offered the IMF in Washington these not good figures from the IMF at all, and the Home Secretary Shahram Mahmood speaking at a conference in London today, basically admitting we've got completely wide open borders. What are you more concerned about?
The economy. I think voters care about both. I think voters care about the economy more, and ultimately a lot of our crises come down to that. Cost of living is what matters to most of us. You know, there is a lot, the bills are going up a lot higher than the wages. You know, I'm noticing that. I'm sure you are. Yeah. I'm sure everyone who's listening is. You can't fix cost of living without fixing the economy. I think that's the number one issue. And let's be honest, it doesn't look great. Immigration matters to people, but look, this government, let's say by magic, they fixed immigration overnight. If they didn't fix the economy, they're still getting booted out. This
is true. It's the economy, stupid, as a senior advisor to Bill Clinton said in one of his election campaigns. That's what, it's the pound in your pocket. And everyone, I don't care, rich or poor, is noticing how much prices are going up. And the IMF are predicting they're going to continue to go up. Inflation is going to be among the highest of the G7 countries. But it also pointed out, you know, these figures on growth. Our growth in living standards is among the lowest. But also, crucially, although we do have some of the highest growth, and Rachel Reeves is very big, we've got some highest growth in the G7 countries, when it's per capita, when it's per head of the population, because we've had millions more people arrive in this country, it's not down to a great, wonderful high birth rate. It's because we've imported a load of people. Our average, our per capita growth has gone down. Now, you're someone who's been massively in favour of immigration, with free movement between us and the EU, absolutely not an issue. Many on the left very much in favour of pretty much free movement from any country. If free movement, if immigration on a mass scale we've seen since Tony Blair onwards is so good for our economy, why doesn't our growth go up more? And why, when it's measured per head of the population, doesn't it look higher? Because if these people are all contributing and they're all high earners and they're all so skilled and they're all contributing and making our lives better and richer, why are we poorer?
Well, they're not. I mean, we haven't done immigration in the better ways we can do it, and immigration has not been a silver bullet that saved our economy.
We were told it was.
I think it has been a bit of a sticking plaster on gaping wounds. I think we wouldn't have a social care sector if it wasn't for quote unquote low skilled immigration.
No, but hold on a minute. We heard this.
Okay,
lots of people. No, James. Lots of people say this, like, well, carers are doing those jobs. Are you pretending? Again, this is the madness of this argument. If we didn't have these people coming in from Eastern Europe or Africa or Philippines or wherever, working as carers on low wages, then what? All the little old ladies in this country, all the old men who need care, they would just all be just lying there dead in their care homes. No, they wouldn't. Someone else would do that job, but they do it at a higher wage.
We'd be having to look at higher wages,
yes.
And perhaps that's what we should have done. Except our councils are already on the verge of bankruptcy. We haven't been willing to pay what care costs.
Yep.
And the way that we have underpaid for care, and often this leads to awful treatment for vulnerable adults, for older adults. You know, I think we all know people who rely on the care system. And it's underfunded and it's miserable. So because we won't pay for it,
but we would have found
the people. Immigration to do it.
The care system.
And that's where it's been a sticking plaster.
No, James, this is the thing. But people say the care system would collapse, or the NHS would. No, they wouldn't. None of them would collapse. Or the system would carry on. It would be done in a different way. But here's the thing. You said there were better ways of doing immigration. What are those better ways?
Look, I think we do have to look. my assessment is we can actually take pretty much any level of immigration we want if we are willing to charge for and build the services that they need. You can't have immigration at 900,000 a year or 400,000 a year when you only build 100,000 homes a year. Like, that doesn't work. You can see that the maths doesn't work. And that also then means that schools are overstretched or doctors' surgeries are overstretched. So if you're going to have high immigration, you need to build the infrastructure for high immigration. If you're not going to build the infrastructure, you need lower immigration, and you need to accept that we might then have some skill shortages, or we might have higher wages, we might have inflation problems, we might have lower growth. Now, what we've tried to do for the last decade is have high immigration and not build any of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually been bad for everyone involved, because it's not the fault of someone who comes here to work as a care worker that there aren't enough homes.
No.
You know, they come, they work, they're actually plugging a gap from the bad choices our governments have made. And I think they end up demonised because of those choices. And
I'm not demonising anyone who comes to this country to make a living.
Yeah. My personal stance is I don't personally mind if immigration is high or low if we build the right services and the right infrastructure and if it works for the country.
And that's, okay,
I think what's been broken is we've let it be high and we've not built that infrastructure.
Yeah, and again, that's been since 2000 when Tony Blair just opened the doors wide open to Eastern Europe. I agree with you on all of that. Apart from, you're saying it doesn't matter to you. Now, it does matter to most people whether or not we have a massively churning new arrivals of in terms of the population. It does matter to people whether people who arrive here, not just whether they've got somewhere to live and whether there's another doctor's surgery opening up so they're not having to wait 3 weeks for a doctor's appointment. They would like the people they live next door to, you know, integrate, to speak English. Maybe they could invite them over for a barbecue. You know, that people want to feel that they are living in the country that they grew up in, not in a backward, not in a, we're all waving a flag at the coronation nonsense. I'm talking about Britain remaining Britain and people coming to Britain to contribute, but also assimilating, integrating, accepting British culture, working towards, you know, speaking the language, all of that. But it's interesting because so many, I think, from your side of the argument, you don't really care about that stuff. This is the sort of citizen of nowhere idea, isn't it? It doesn't really matter to you where people are from.
I don't think it's quite true. I think you'd be a bit of a weird person if you said, I don't care if people never learn English or never sort of try and integrate. I think, you know, the best bits of Britain are where we get bits of other cultures and we make them part of British culture. You know,
why do you think that?
Tikka masala as part of a national dish, all of that.
No, that was brought over by Brits from India.
But I think, you know, the people on my side of the argument tend to live in the places that have highest sort of populations born abroad. You know, we live in London. That's got the highest born abroad in the country. Thank you for joining my cat.
I'm going to get hello, cat.
Yep. We have, you know, we live alongside these and we do sort of see these cultures mix. Now, have we done it well? No. Have we got a falling community across this stuff? Yes. You see things like youth groups or community groups that used to get council funding where people came together now rely on one volunteer that's usually a man in his 70s who's worried that the whole thing will fall apart when he dies. I think we put other problems on immigration.
But this is a result. You're saying it doesn't matter whether immigration levels are high or low. You're saying, yes, of course you want people to integrate. But this is the point. You can't integrate and assimilate people arriving on the scale they've been arriving. Proof is in the pudding. But the thing I just find extraordinary, the number of people who will say the best bits of Britain are where it's basically not very like Britain, where it's diverse. Where it's like, I've got lots and lots of friends who've come from abroad, lots and lots of friends who've had a first language or still have first language that is not English, but who are totally assimilated to this country, who wanted to come and live here, whose children, they speak formal English, their children speak fluent English, they accept Britain's laws and culture and are part of the community, which is very, very different from huge numbers of people coming to this country from many different countries arriving here and going, I'm just going to set up my own country, all the culture, everything, and I'm going to set it up here in Britain. And that is what changes a country. And no, I don't think the East End of London is a wonderful, much better place now because it's largely Bangladeshi than it was when it was largely indigenous white Brits. Nothing to do with the colour of anyone's skin. It's just, why do you think that's better than it was. I don't understand. What's better about it?
I just think it's a nice bit of town. You've got pubs next to mosques. It generally goes fine. It's a good bit of London.
You've got
it's
fun
not nearly
runs.
as good as...
You've got fun runs that girls over 12 aren't allowed to join for religious reasons, for Sharia reasons.
Look,
that's great, isn't it? That's Britain. That's Britain. There you are. That's the local community really, really, getting integrated, becoming British, isn't it? Saying,
I'm a humanist. Sorry,
you've started your period, love. You're now fair game, and you no longer have equal rights with men, because that's what the message was on that fun run, wasn't it? That's why over 12-year-old girls weren't allowed to join. But you're happy with that, because that makes Britain better in your view, doesn't it?
No, I'm not. I think, look...
That's what you signed up to.
No, we tolerate religious freedom in this country. We let, within their own sort of private spheres, different religions can practice within limits what they want. I don't think as a state, as official public services, as anything getting public funding, anything should be allowed in there. I'm a humanist. That's where I push from. I don't like that stuff at all.
Should it be illegal?
But I tolerate it.
I don't tolerate it. What if they said no gays?
What
if they said no gays? No gay people?
No, I obviously oppose that. That would cause me some problems.
Well, no, but you would tolerate it, because I wouldn't.
No, this is why I say within some limits. But, I don't like that where it's fundamental Christian groups doing it. I don't like that when it's fundamental Muslim groups doing it. We agree. I think where you get some problems are where you try and do forced integration. And I think France is worse. Well, no, I think France tries this.
Don't have people come here who don't want to integrate. There's your solution.
France tries this, and it is worse at this than we are. Look, let me say Britain is better than somewhere in Europe. I can't say that. France tries to force a lot of this, and I think actually we are better at integrating than France is. And we don't need A-level English and to teach immigrants Beowulf to do that.
James, the thing is, you shouldn't ever have to force anyone to integrate. If they come to your country, they should want to integrate. If they don't want to integrate, you shouldn't have them here. James, we'll leave it there. Political Edge of the New World. Covered a lot of ground there. Claire Pissell, your thoughts?
Really, really interesting. And I think my takeaway from this, the majority of the United Kingdom are incredibly tolerant. What they're not tolerant of...
more than that, welcoming.
Yeah, welcoming. But what they are not tolerant or welcoming is the sheer quantity of individuals coming in who offer nothing to the country they're coming to.
Culturally, financially,
all of that.
Exactly.
They don't want to live in separate enclaves. They're quite happy when people are just doing their bit.
But you have the sort of middle-class lefty elite who are like, it doesn't really matter. It's all about just public service. It's always about money.
I found that interesting.
It's not about whether people are integrated or the number of people. You cannot integrate 900,000 new arrivals. You can't do that. How do I know that? Because it's happened and we haven't. There you go. 10:48 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about the economy with Julian Jessup, an independent economist. How bad is it? This is Talk.
that thought that
a group of women made a citizen's arrest. The person that they arrested was a man by the name of Mark Thurston, who is CEO of Anglian Water. These women, who are all part of this organisation called Citizens Arrest, surrounded him, held hands so that he couldn't escape. They're accusing him of up to 3 counts of public nuisance, focusing on environmental damage, illegal sewage spills, which pose a risk to the public's access to clean water, their failure to maintain equipment which leads to the spills, and mismanagement of funds following bill increases, and Thurston's bonus ban.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. That's really, if I say so myself, very interesting conversation with James Paul. A lot of the nuances there of immigration, and frankly, why some people, as lovely and nice as he is, they just don't get it. But do we get it where we are on the economy? Let's talk to Julian Jessup. He's an independent economist and joins us now. Very good morning to you, Julian.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Right, it's very difficult when to understand, if you're not, an economist, not paying attention to all these numbers, to work out, like, are we in a good situation or a bad situation? Because the latest figures from the International Monetary Fund it seems to me they can be spun in various different ways. Oh, the highest, among the highest growth in the G7, and then actually it's the lowest. Break down the numbers in easy Janet and John for us.
OK, well, the IMF number is a good place to start. So those who want to tell a positive story are focusing on the fact that we are forecast to have some of the highest growth in the economy over the next couple of years of any of the major economies. So that sounds great. But if you look below the surface, a lot of that is being driven by very high levels of net immigration. So if you look at GDP per head, so you adjust for the growth of the population, then we've actually got some of the weakest growth in that group of advanced economies. And GDP per head is a much better measure of living standards for ordinary families than just looking at the headline numbers. So that's bad news. The other piece of bad news from the IMF yesterday, though this has been clear for some time, is that the UK has the highest inflation rate of that group of advanced economies, and it's forecast to continue to do so last year. So we're having sluggish growth in living standards, and that's partly because our inflation rate is significantly higher than in many other countries.
And why is that the case? Because we saw that massive spike in inflation post-lockdown, and then it just went absolutely sky high with the invasion of Ukraine and the impact on energy prices. And we have obviously our insane energy policy here, which meant that we were particularly hard hit by that. The government sort of tried to, they basically borrowed a load of money, which we're now paying off now, to take down some of our energy price hit that we took. But why is it going up still? Why is inflation? Well, it's come down from that 11.1% peak. Why is it still riding high?
Well, you're right, of course, that inflation has been much higher in the recent past. And if I were trying to tell a positive story, it's that things have been worse. I mean, the economy is at least growing a little bit. Unemployment has risen, but is still close to historic lows. And inflation, although it's high, is nowhere near as high as it was a few years ago. But that's really no consolation because, of course, even if inflation is lower, it still means the level of prices is a lot higher. It's just that they're not rising as much.
And that's the thing. They didn't go up by this amount and then they came down again. They've gone up and now they're just going up at a slightly lower rate, but they're still up. I mean, anyone who goes to the supermarket, I don't care if you're a millionaire or not, you notice the prices in the supermarket.
Yes, and that's a particular problem with the current inflation, is it's being led by things that are essential, so food in particular, but energy costs as well. And they're also goods that people buy more frequently than others. So they're particularly aware of your weekly shop going up. So it has a bigger effect than other price increases might have on what you're expecting about inflation and how you feel about your personal finances.
And we have seen wages are going up, and there were some people got some decent wage rises. If you're a doctor or a train driver, well done you. But an awful lot of people, they might have had a wage rise, it looks good, but actually it's completely eaten up by inflation straight away.
Yes, we have had a burst of real wage growth where wages on average have been rising faster than prices. So that's been a good thing. But that is already petering out. Wage growth is now slowing quite rapidly, partly, of course, because the economy is slowing, labour costs have risen, employers simply are not hiring as much as they used to do. So that positive is fading. As to your sort of earlier question, why is UK inflation higher than elsewhere? I mean, it's mainly down to the government, I'm afraid. There are a number of areas, including some that the IMF picked out. So these are things like what the IMF calls higher regulated prices. So they're prices that the government essentially controls, utility bills, energy prices in particular. But also it's the pass-through of higher labour costs. So at the last budget, Rachel Reeves massively increased the cost of employing people through raising employer national insurance contributions and increasing the minimum wage. And those cost increases are inevitably being passed on to working people, not just in the form of higher prices, but also lower wages and fewer jobs than there otherwise have been.
Almost like everyone had predicted. I mean, and we've also seen latest employment figures, employment at a 4-year high.
Yes, I mean...
Unemployment, sorry.
Yeah, the unemployment story is a little bit complicated because that partly reflects the fact that more people are starting to look for work. So economic inactivity, as we call it, has fallen. That's no bad thing. But the problem is that those people are not then finding jobs, because employers are not recruiting. Young people in particular are being stuck in unemployment, not able to find work. And that's particularly damaging because that risks writing off a whole generation of young people who would otherwise be in work.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and how much of this is down to, because the usual suspects been out and about today, Brexit?
Very little. I mean, I have a positive view of Brexit. Even I would acknowledge that the initial impact has been negative, but it's very odd now.
Well, the way it was implemented, yes, but post, I mean, in the middle of a lockdown, it probably didn't help.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that investment is weaker than it would otherwise have been. There's been a bit less trade than it would otherwise have been, but that's a relatively small factor in the bigger picture. So the UK's economic problems, you can trace them arguably back to, say, 2008, the global financial crisis. Our productivity growth has been weak ever since then. And it's a bit odd to blame the vote in 2016 for what's happening now.
Well, indeed. And we're told, Rachel Reeves, in some of the interviews she's done today, there are going to be tax rises, but also spending cuts. But we know, she's got those pledges on what taxes she will and won't will increase. And we know that the Labour backbenchers are going to stop major welfare cuts, which is where it really needs to come from. What's she going to do?
Well, I think there's no doubt we're going to get another bumper package of tax increases. If we go back to October last year, she raised about 40 billion in tax increases, primarily through that increase in employers' national insurance, which, as I say, is essentially a tax on working people. And she found the rest mainly from a sort of mix of the taxes on capital, which in principle are paid by the better off, but because they slow the amount of saving and investment in the economy, everybody suffers as a result. My worry is that we're going to get that same number again, about 40 billion. And it's impossible to see how that can be just raised purely from so-called rich people. I think it's inevitable that working people will pay more, whether that's through income tax or other taxes.
It'll be slyly done. There'll be those stealth taxes, but at the end of the day, we're going to end up paying, aren't we? Julia Jessup, it's been a really cheerful, happy conversation. Independent economist Julia Jessup. I mean, it's not good. I mean, and it's been going like this for years. Weirdly, despite immigration, which of course was going to be the thing that would boom our economy.
Indeed, but I think that's right, pinpointing it back to something in 2008, which was the enormous downfall of the markets, rather than blaming it on Brexit, which a lot of people voted for.
After the end of boom and bust, which was by the way, here's some good news for you folks. The Oxford University student Samuel Williams, he of the chant "Put the Zios in the ground," it's been suspended by Oxford University pending the outcome of a police investigation. Spokesman for the university has condemned the chant in the strongest possible terms. Well done, Oxford University. Well done, the police, for actually investigating, because, this isn't about freedom of speech. This is about really simple stuff. You can't go around chanting publicly for people to be killed because you disagree with their views. That's not freedom of speech. That's a criminal act. Sorry, Samuel Williams, from the hard streets of Royal Tunbridge Wells, from where he hails. You may have messed up, mate. Not as clever as you thought you were when you go into Oxford, eh? This is Talk, home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for your company, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you do miss anything of the show, if you missed the last hour, you've missed a stonking first hour. Get to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking more about the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. She's saying today in a speech at a conference of Balkan interior ministers in London that we need international cooperation to make our borders secure. But she says that Britain's failure to control its borders is eroding trust in the credibility of the state and indeed in trust in politicians. Well, she's not wrong, is she? Meanwhile, talking of trust, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is over in Washington at the IMF summit and said she's considering both tax rises and spending cuts in the budget. This comes after the IMF reported that we have got, if you allow for the number of people who've arrived in the country, among the lowest growth in GDP among the G7 nations. Plus, a new poll out last night that shows that Nigel Farage is set for the biggest Commons majority in modern political history, with the Tories reduced to just, wait for it, 7 MPs, according to this explosive MRP mega poll. Reform UK is on course to win 445 seats. Labour down to just 73 MPs if an election were held tomorrow. Well, got a few more years, realistically, to the next election, but we'll get the thoughts of Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice in just a moment about that. Also going to be talking about latest in the Middle East. Donald Trump has vowed to disarm Hamas after the militant group was seen executing suspected collaborators in Gaza as it attempted to regain control after the partial withdrawal of Israeli troops. This comes only hours after Donald Trump proclaimed in his peace plan as the end of the era of terror and death in the Middle East. He said he would disarm Hamas. They can only disarm whether we have to use violence or not. This comes also as we had the news this morning of 4 more bodies being returned by the Hamas to the IDF after threats of closing the border and access for aid to people, to aid trucks. But 4 more bodies then were returned last night. We're told more on the way. But 3 of those bodies have been identified as being some of the hostages who were known to have died in captivity. Well, let's call it right. Been murdered in captivity. One of them, however, does not match any of the DNA of any of those murdered. And we've seen this before, have we not, with the return of the Bieber family, and the mother's coffin contained not her, but someone else. So yet again, Hamas terrorists turn out to be liars. I think I'm as shocked as you are. Anyway, lots more to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts, in particular about whether or not you're more worried about the economy or immigration, given we've got 2 senior figures in the cabinet making speeches today. Tell us why you're more concerned about the economy or why you're more concerned about immigration, or indeed both. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text us on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. Just remember that breaking news that the Oxford student Samuel Williams, hailing from the mean streets of Tunbridge Wells, has been suspended from Oxford University after he led chants calling on Gaza to put the Zios in the ground. A death chant for people who have a different political view from him, wearing his keffiyeh, of course, cosplaying as usual as a terrorist. He's a PP undergraduate at Balliol College. He's under investigation by the Metropolitan Police after making the remarks over a microphone, very proudly leading a march in central London on Saturday. Claire Pearsall joins me. She's former Conservative government advisor. Great news. I mean, I don't want someone's life to be ruined, but I also want people to be able to go around not facing death threats. I think that's not an unreasonable thing to ask.
But that's just taking responsibility for what he's done. I think that he's going to feel very hard done by. I think his parents need to have a long, hard look as to how well they've perhaps brought him up. I would be appalled if it was my child. I just have to say that. I would be handing them in, I think, myself, because I would be embarrassed that they had
I'd go down a different route in terms of the discipline on that one, but there we are. That kefir would be put to good use. Put it that way.
He's going to be shunned in the local branch of Waitrose in Tunny Wells. I can tell you that much.
Oh, he is. No. The Waitrose shoppers, they'll all be fully supportive. It's those sort of people. I mean, I shop at Waitrose all the time. I'm only kidding, but there we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, good. Well done, Oxford University, doing the right thing there. We need more of that, please. Anyway, 11:07 is the time. Let's turn our attention to Richard Tice. He's the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and joins us right now. A very good morning to you, Richard.
Good morning to you, and I also congratulate Oxford University on doing the right thing with that appalling incident, and I hope that it acts as a deterrent to students at Oxford and any other university.
Yeah.
Free speech is a great thing, but that doesn't give you the right to break the law and incite hatred, violence and anti-Semitism.
And that is the reality, isn't it? And we know, particularly Jewish students terrified of applying to some universities because of this. And it's absolutely rife, particularly on, I suppose, elite university campuses and frankly around some of the academics as well. It's the same in America. And this isn't about freedom of speech. This is people exercising their political views. You can go on a march and be concerned, and you can want a Palestinian state all you want, but you're able to do that without inciting death to other people.
That's the point, and let's hope that that is a significant deterrent to other students and indeed to lecturers and the like.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Totally unacceptable.
Yeah, good. I completely agree with you. Now, I want to get to the good news about this poll. I'll get to that in a few moments, but we've not had very good news when it comes to pretty much anything else, certainly on the economy in the last 24 hours. The IMF basically saying, well, highest inflation, lowest growth per capita, lowest growth in living standards, and it's all going in the wrong direction. And we've got a budget coming up in 6 weeks' time when the Chancellor has now admitted, well, yeah, there are going to be tax rises and, well, some spending cuts, but we know we've got Labour-backed pensions who won't allow welfare to be cut. So how bad is it, Richard?
It's very bad, and I'm often critical of the IMF, but they've got the direction of travel of the state of our economy correct. My fear, though, is that the numbers actually will turn out to be somewhat worse, possibly significantly worse than the IMF is indicating. I don't think we're going to have the level of growth they're thinking this year. In almost all the metrics, whether it's inflation, whether it's GDP growth, we are going to have the worst performance in the G7, I think, this year, quite probably next year. And it's all because this socialist, this hard left government are doing all the wrong things. They are increasing the amount of wasteful, useless public sector spending. They're increasing taxes. They're increasing regulation. They're demotivating people to take risk as entrepreneurs. They're demotivating the incentive to work. Still far too much incentive to claim benefits, to sit on your backside. And it's a catastrophe. The bottom line is, if you look at the markets, the more on premium they apply to the cost of UK government debt, we are heading to a very bad financial place. And
yet your party, Nigel Farage said over the weekend, he was going to be, looking at, some more detailed tax proposals and spending proposals, saying, well, actually, tax cuts might have to wait for spending cuts. You've talked about, you're going to save a load of money by not having the net zero madness. You want to cut benefits and the like. But, we still need the numbers to add up. The reality is you've got things like, you're still in favour of scrapping the two-child benefit cap and nonsense like that.
Well, look, Julia, ultimately, we've got to stop spending more than we are earning. And at the moment, we're spending 150, 160 billion pounds a year more than we're earning as a country. And what we're saying is that we've got to get the house in order. Focus has to totally be on dramatic reductions in wasteful, unproductive, useless public sector spending. We're already seeing it and cutting our teeth in councils. I've identified billions of pounds of savings in the mismanagement and underperformance of the local government pension scheme. Just as one example, the cost of net zero, I said a year ago it's 30 billion a year. Everyone scoffed at me and said, what are you talking about, Tice? A year later, the OBR caught up with me and said, goodness me, Tice is right. It's 30 billion. Almost bang on the number.
I don't believe for a moment that it's as low as that, because the long-term impact is actually huge.
We're the party, and no one's saying we're perfect. We can all get things right and we can all make the odd mistake. That's fine. But the bottom line is we're the only party that identified that the Bank of England shouldn't be spending voluntarily taxpayers' cash, paying interest on all the printed money.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with Nigel and the governor a couple of weeks ago. I'm demanding a debate in Parliament. We could help the Chancellor. I mean, I'm always like to be constructive and to bring people together, Julia. We could help the Chancellor by saying, if you don't pay this voluntary interest, if you don't do quantitative tightening, we could save you £20 billion a year, which means you wouldn't have to raise taxes, which means you get more economic growth next year. It's not rocket science.
No, well, I mean, it isn't rocket science. It's also not rocket science that if you import a huge number of people, millions in the last few years, who are not net contributors to the economy, our economy won't improve. Two interesting stories today, specifically regarding legal and illegal migrants. 1 in 6 universal credit recipients in this country are migrants. Large number of them are from the EU, being able to stay here since Brexit. Most of those are not working. We've also got illegal migrants facing deportation under a Serco contract worth 260 million quid. It's on the front page of the Sun today. The Serco basically operates centres next to Gatwick Airport, where we taxpayers are paying to give art and craft lessons, IT lessons, and even English lessons to illegal migrants who are about to be deported. I'm not quite sure why we need to give them any classes in something, particularly in English, when we're about to throw them out of the country. What do you make of those two stories?
I weep and despair at the madness. But here's the point. The big picture, Julia, is that we were told for 15 years that immigration for people to come and work and fill the jobs was a good thing. The critical word is work. So if we need immigration for work, why in heaven's name would we pay a single penny for people to sit on their backside? Not a single penny should be paid. I've got whole streets in Boston where almost nobody speaks a word of English, where very few people are working, and they are primarily from Eastern Europe. And it is completely unacceptable. The busiest shop in Boston is the shop that is sending money back to Eastern Europe through sort of bank transfer system and selling flights back to Eastern Europe. This is a scam. It's a scandal. It's got to stop, the whole lot. There are tens of billions to be saved in welfare by making it very clear. Work's a great thing. If you're genuinely disabled, genuinely vulnerable, genuinely unemployed, of course, we will do the right thing. Absolutely. What we can't tolerate is abuse, mickey-taking and ripping off the hard-working British taxpayer.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. What do you make of the case yesterday? We had the sentencing to 5 years behind bars, of course, only serving 18 months of that, of Fayez Khan, an asylum seeker, an illegal migrant from Afghanistan, who made open, blatant, public TikTok threats to kill Nigel Farage, not just your leader, but also your friend. Case was highlighted, only came to court because Nigel Farage was sent the TikTok video, and there were a couple of videos. I'm surprised it was even a charge was brought, but it was. The man was convicted, and he's now been sentenced. And as Nigel Farage points out, in 18 months' time, this man realistically is going to be back on our streets. We're going to be paying for him in an asylum hotel. We'll probably be paying for him to have art classes and IT lessons as well.
What's the point of saying 5 years if that actually means 18 months? Why not just say 18 months? The whole thing's absurd. 5 years should mean 5 years.
Yep.
And death threats, carrying knives, that sort of thing, there has to be a serious, proper deterrent. But I suspect most people would say, actually, I don't want to pay 30, 40, 50 grand a year to incarcerate this bloke, blocking up a prison space in the UK. Let's just remove him to his country of origin, although I think there are other countries that actually want him to appear before their own courts for other serious offences. 17
convictions in Sweden alone.
So, we just don't want that individual here. And as Nigel raised yesterday, how many others of a similar mindset of multiple convictions, criminal offences from overseas are we paying for to live rent-free in our hotels, walking the streets, looking at children in primary and secondary schools, and receiving our money? The whole thing is completely outrageous.
Do you think also, I mean, I think there's been an ongoing issue for quite a few years, especially just starting, the milkshakes being thrown over Nigel Farage, and even rocks pelted at him when he was on a campaign bus at the last election. So much of the media, so much of the political class don't take seriously the threats that Nigel Farage faces, the 24-hour security he's needed for many years as a result of those threats. But if someone sort of says a hurty word to a Labour MP, I mean, everyone's clutching their pearls in the House of Commons about it. We've had 2 MPs who've been murdered. We've had a number of others who've been attacked. This is a serious, serious issue. Someone who's got an AK-47 tattooed on their face, coming from a war-torn country, making death threats to kill, I think one would reasonably take seriously. Do you think that the state is taking seriously the security of high-profile politicians, particularly Nigel Farage?
Not seriously enough, given that a few weeks ago the state authorities reduced his security by 75% when he is one of the most, if not the most, at-risk politician in the United Kingdom. And words have consequences. Yep. And when the Prime Minister of this country says in his conference speech that words are not enough, people need to arm themselves and we need action, don't be surprised if that gives license to extremists to kill people horrifically from the Jewish community in Manchester. Threats to Nigel. We've had people assault some of our members on stalls. And just last Thursday evening, when I was at a student event, I had a member of the audience try to lie their way past my security to get in the green room. Heaven knows what harm they wanted to come at me. But judging by the rant they gave, uncontrolled, ludicrous rant they gave during the talk, I suspect it may not have ended well. So, yeah, there are serious security risks, and we all are conscious of it. And tragically, today is the 4th anniversary of the murder of Sir David Amess.
Absolutely, absolutely. On a happier note, certainly for you and many of the supporters of you, and I know we've got an awful lot of our audience who are very big fans, good news in terms of the latest poll. This one is another of those big mega polls, not just of 1,000 people, by MRP. And they're putting you guys down as set for the biggest common majority in modern political history, 445 seats, Labour down to 73 seats, Tories just annihilated down to 7 MPs. That's, though, if an election were held tomorrow. Now, you're riding high in the polls, no doubt at all about that, but there are crucial sort of numbers to get over to see. We know that come an election, there often are people voting tactically against the party they least like as opposed to the party they most want. Are you still confident you can win the next election?
We believe we absolutely can and must win the next election in order to save the United Kingdom. But of course, there are multiple challenges along the way. We don't know the terrifying state of the nation's finances. Of course, we've got a lot of work to do on preparations of detailed policies, detailed draft legislation. And look, we'll make some mistakes, Julia. None of us are perfect. But if we're honest about where we've got things right, where we've got things wrong, where we need to tweak and learn and keep learning, then I think the British people will put their faith and trust in us. And when people come at us and say, yeah, but what experience have you got? My simple response is, crikey, if those lot who've ruined the country in the last 15 years, including this mob in charge at the moment, if they're the professionals, God help us all, maybe it's time for some serious people from the world of business and other walks of life who've got a successful track record to come in and make some stuff happen. It's as simple as that. The country is in a terrible, terrible pickle.
Richard Tice, MP, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, thank you very much indeed for joining us. 11:20 is the time. Claire Pearsall, as a Conservative, I mean, just in reaction to that poll, and again, polls are polls, and we know that Labour predicted to get about 10 points ahead of where they were actually on the day. How people actually vote on the day, we don't know what's going to happen. Things could get worse, could get better for any of the parties. Who knows what's going on? But only 7. You thought it was bad, 24. You could be down to 7 MPs. Do we get to pick which 7?
Well, I think we should, because I think we'd be best placed to pick them. Look, yes, it does show that Reform are popular. I don't think anybody's going to deny that. But it is one poll, it is one snapshot, it is a long time out from an election, and a lot of things can happen.
Oh, well done. Didn't she do well? Give her a little... Do you mean that?
Of course, every single word.
There we are. We're going to take your calls up next. You turned it a bit topsy-turvy in this half hour because of Richard Tice's timings, but we're going to take your calls. Love to hear your thoughts on whether you think it's the economy or the immigration that worries you most. Tell us why you think one or the other, or both. 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your reaction also to that reform poll. Oh, yeah, and to that Oxford University student, Samuel Williams, who led the chant calling on Gaza to put the Zios in the ground. They've been workshopping that chant at Oxford. He's been suspended by Oxford University pending the outcome of Metropolitan Police investigation. Hooray! Finally some sense. Is this the beginning of the end of this madness? Oh, we can but dream. This is Talk.
A group of women made a citizen's arrest. The person that they arrested was a man by the name of Mark Thurston, who is CEO of Anglian Water. These women, who are all part of this organisation called Citizens Arrest, surrounded him, held hands so that he couldn't escape. They're accusing him of up to 3 counts of public nuisance, focusing on environmental damage and illegal sewage spills, which pose a risk to the public's access to clean water, their failure to maintain equipment which leads to the spills, and mismanagement of funds following bill increases, and Thurston's bonus ban.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:24 is the time. Do get in touch. Give us your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Robert is doing just that. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Julia. You know what? I'm thinking of not listening to this station for a little while.
What?
It just makes... Well, no, because it just makes you so angry.
Wait, no, I use Radio 4 for that. Just G me up in the morning, just shouting at the radio.
Well, 2 bits of news have come to light this morning that's given me the right ump. Number one, Angela Rayner's had a 17 grand kiss off.
Yeah.
Which is, she should have got nicked to around about 17 grand. And this Samuel Williams...
This is the just people. This is the just people just tuned in. The Oxford student who led chants calling, Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. A death chant for people who support the state of Israel. And basic Zios is code for Jew. He's got a police investigation and he's been suspended by Oxford University this morning.
Not good enough. Not good enough.
Why would you want to happen?
Doing what they've done to Lucy Connolly. Straight away to the police station. Don't see the light of day. And not only that, it's. Oxford University is a breeding ground for Marxism. I don't care what you say. Nobody can convince me anymore. Prove to us that it's not.
Yeah.
Prove to us that it's not a breeding ground, because this guy, once he's qualified, he's going to go and do some harm. Now, he could become... I don't mean physical harm.
Yep.
I mean, he could become a school teacher.
Oh, yeah.
These...
I mean, our universities are completely captured by complete left-wing ideology. Look, it was bad enough during Brexit, for goodness sake, when, there were dons. There were literally, academics at top universities saying, in a poll, they wouldn't sit next to an academic who they knew had voted for Brexit. I mean, that's weird, right? That's weird.
Well, it's the thing is, it's Marxism, and it's taking away democracy. The unions, the NHS, and the universities and schools are rife with Marxism.
They're absolutely captured. Yep.
They should dig it out because it's doing some real harm.
And again, people often think of Marx, they think of it, it's left-wing ideology. It's about, means of production. No, it's also about controlling us. It's also about dividing our nation, and it's about all this madness in terms of the DEI. They are all of that. The climate change stuff to bring down our economy. There is a concerted attempt to basically destroy Western civilization, our values and our cultures. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That is going on.
That's the Fabian Society for you.
Everyone's got this theory about the Fabian. I'm not entirely sure that is. I think people have got their nigs in the twist about this sort of particular conspiracy theory. But I don't think that is the case. I might bring in Claire on that, actually. But so I appreciate your call, Robert. But don't stop listening because it's infuriating. I mean, otherwise my marriage would be over. Yeah, he has to put up with it at home. Claire Fussell, you're just responding to that.
Yeah, I think everybody's getting a little bit giving too much credit for the Fabian Society. And
explain this theory that people have got. It's an online theory.
It's an online theory that anybody on the left with influence and power has come through the Fabian Society, which is akin to saying that everybody who voted for Brexit is terribly right-wing and nasty and partners with
the Fabian's supposed to be the good guys,
something.
but basically it's just an organisation. It's just a Labour organisation. It's just
it absolutely is, and they put together some receptions in Parliament. They put together a little bit of information.
Networking.
It is. They do some interesting sort of pieces.
And also,
of
people tend to hire their mates. I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, look at Keir Starmer. He's basically, he's already run out of anyone half decent to appoint in his own government as advisor. He's putting the old Blair band back together. Virtually all of his advisors now, people who used to work for Tony Blair, for goodness' sake.
Because he has no friends of his own.
This is true, and no one of any talent. But there we are. I give to you the front bench. Glyn is in Nottingham. Glyn, you want to have your say? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, just a couple of quick things. First off, this chap, I think his name was James, seemed to say that he didn't mind how many people came into the country as long as somebody paid for them.
This was James Ball from the New World. Basically saying he wasn't concerned about immigration as long as we built the infrastructure.
Well, yeah, but he didn't say who he wanted to pay for it.
Yes, you're quite right.
It's me.
Yeah. We're supposed to. Someone's going to come here, not be a net contributor tax-wise themselves, push down wages for everyone else in Britain, and then we're going to pay for them to have, doctors and public services that they need.
Basically, for the rest of their lives.
It's a very good point. You're right. You're quite right.
But at the end of the day, all this can only come down to one man, and that's Mr. Starmer, because they always say judge a leader by the people he puts around himself.
Yeah.
And when you look at him, he lost, what was it, one for fraud, one for corruption, one for fiddling the housing tax, one for making people homeless, the American ambassador. I mean, and then he's got two people who lied on the CVs. One apparently was illegal. And then, bless him, he's got David Lammy.
Yeah, but every village needs an idiot, Glyn.
Yeah, but I believe in what Mr. Anderson said. But, you've got David Lammy, who thinks that Marie Antoinette got the Nobel Prize for Physics. Henry VII followed Henry VIII.
Yes, he does.
And bless him, that a bloke can have a cervix implanted.
His celebrity master. If you ever want to cheer yourself up, go online and look up David Lammy Mastermind, because it's an absolute joy. Yeah, Glyn, I think you're quite right. Again, Keir Starmer's an inadequate man whose inadequacies shine through every single day, and he's surrounded himself with another bunch of inadequates. There's no doubt at all about that. Glyn, really appreciate your call. They're vicious today, Claire.
They really are, but I think Glyn is quite right, and we should go through sort of Muppet Show style with the cabinet and just work out where the talent is.
Here's the key thing, right? Okay, we're only a year and a bit through. First. This isn't end of days. This isn't like 12 years into government on your third prime minister. This is, the collapse of this government so quickly into chaos and incompetence it's quite mind-blowing. This is always my thing when people talk about conspiracy theories. Trust me, you only have to look at them. You only have to see these people to realise they're not capable of a conspiracy. No. They can barely zip up their trousers in the morning, for goodness sake. Anyway, I mean, really, just never ascribe to corruption or malfeasance or evil what you can to utter abject stupidity and incompetence. And on that note, we are going to be talking about where we are in the Middle East and a wonderful contribution to that peace process. We're going to talk to the brilliant columnist for The Times, Melanie Phillips, in just a couple of moments. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:34 is the time. Well, we've been talking an awful lot in the last few weeks about international affairs, particularly what's going on in the Middle East. Today it's been mainly about domestic affairs, but let's turn our attention back to the Middle East right now with Melanie Phillips. She's a columnist for the Times newspaper. She's also author of the brilliant book, The Builder's Stone, How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. A very good morning to you, Melanie.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much, indeed. Well, we've spoken to you about your book before, but goodness me, I mean, how prescient that was given where we are right now. Lots of developments since we've last spoke, and some of them obviously very fantastic. The return of those 20 living hostages held by Hamas. We've had the return now of, well, 7 hostages who their dead bodies, supposed to be 8, but one has been identified by the IDF as not one of the hostages that they were expecting. So once again, more lies from Hamas. Why are we surprised? But what did you make just generally, since the first time I've spoken to you, since we had that incredible, ceasefire and the return of hostages, what do you make generally of the peace plan that Donald Trump has, at least tentatively at the start, put in place?
Well, the return of the 20 living hostages was an amazing thing. I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem. Yesterday was Simchat Torah, the festival on which 2 years ago the hostages were taken. And, we were all so overwhelmed, I think is the word. The emotions are running so high. But nevertheless, I was concerned and disturbed to hear President Trump, who deserves all credit for the return of the hostages. And, his reception here was adulatory, and that was well deserved. But nevertheless, he said many times, the war is over. And to us here in Israel, the war is not over because, first of all, we all knew that Hamas would renege on every condition that it possibly could. And that, there is a Trump's 20-point plan, which involves, among other things, the complete disarmament of Hamas. Hamas is saying that it won't disarm. Hamas, since the hostages were returned and since the peace plan came into effect and since, therefore, the Israelis withdrew from parts of Gaza, the Hamas have been murdering significant numbers of their opponents.
And not on the quiet. I mean, they've been filmed openly in the streets with large crowds.
Indeed, and it's openly for a purpose. They are demonstrating they are still there. They have not been defeated. They are in control. Now, we'll see how that pans out. But the fact is, the war is not over. And President Trump has said in the last, I think, overnight, that he is not pleased. First of all, the Hamas have broken the condition of returning all the dead hostages. 7 have been returned. One was the 8th, as you say, was turns out not to be an Israeli at all. There was 27 or 28 of them are supposed to be returned. There's a breach of that for a start. And the second point is that they have not disarmed and that they are killing people. And Trump has said they will be disarmed. Either they will voluntarily disarm or we will disarm them. Now, what does that mean? We don't know. But basically, it means that the war in real terms must continue until Trump's own conditions are met.
And the interesting thing, of course, is, when this was first announced at the White House with Netanyahu, Donald Trump made it very clear that, if Hamas don't agree and Hamas don't stick to the terms, then Israel can finish the job effectively. And this is the thing. It was so clear to me, and I've been to Israel and spoken to so many people and seen, how, obsession sounds like the wrong word, but just all-encompassing thought about the hostages who were being held for the people of Israel. Everybody knew somebody, everyone also knew somebody whose child is or close relative is fighting in the IDF with mass conscription. That they were the joy at getting the hostages back, but also the joy at the prospect of peace from a war they did not start. And although we've seen scenes of jubilation and joy in Gaza, a lot of it has also been accompanied by, more chants of death to the Jews and the end of Israel. What a surprise. But the reality is, American, British or any other troops aren't going to be on the ground to defeat Hamas. It's still going to be up to Israel. And one of the other key conditions of this 20-point plan, not yet, probably never accepted by Hamas, is not just Hamas laying down their arms, but also, the acceptance of Israel's right to security, which Israel does not yet have.
Well, indeed. And one of the things that's been glossed over throughout this past terrible 2 years, not least glossed over by Israel itself, I think wrongly so, is the fact that the people who are at war, exterminatory war against Israel, are the Palestinians, the Palestinian leadership, the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas. Now, everyone knows about Hamas, but, the war against Israel is not prosecuted by Hamas alone. Hamas is the most extreme wing because it does not put on a suit and tie, and it does not pretend to be involved in the diplomatic game. It makes no bones about the fact that it's out to murder Jews, slaughter Israelis, and destroy Israel completely through military means. And the PA, the Palestinian Authority, led by Abbas, pretends otherwise. But the fact is, it is one agenda, and that agenda is still very much on. And I'm afraid to say that, Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, in particular, are leading this sort of charge of a Palestine state. I mean, they had the gall, Starmer had the gall to pretend that his recognition of a so-called Palestinian state, a complete fantasy, had something to do with the release of the hostages. On the contrary, as America and Israel repeatedly said, it had put back the release of the hostages. Now, he's still going on about this, and he will go on about this because, we can talk about this if you like, but it's a sort of an obsession of the Western liberal universalist elite represented by Starmer, that a Palestine state is the only way to solve the Arab-Israel war. And this is is based on a fundamental misconception. The misconception is the idea that this patch of land is being fought over by two peoples with a right to the land. It's not so. The only people with a legal, historical, and moral right to the land are the Jews, and the Palestinian cause for the past 100 years has been involved absolutely in trying to destroy the Jews' own claim to the land. So it's an exterminatory agenda. You don't solve a problem which is basically a war of extermination by compromising with the exterminators.
But also the opposite of compromise have come repeatedly. I mean, even Bill Clinton has been very, very clear, has been involved in the room. Take the deal. Take the deal. 4 times.
Yes,
Palestinian leaders have been offered pretty much every single thing they've asked for, and they have turned it down because their aim is not a Palestinian state. Their aim is a destruction of the Jewish state of Israel.
And to all these offers, Israel was in agreement, against its better judgment, against its own security, but it felt it had no choice. But it did actually agree to this. And as you say, it was turned down. So this, people in Israel are pretty clear of what they're up against here. Unfortunately, the West is not. And another thing that worries me about the Trump 20-point plan is that his whole kind of the day after peace agenda, which has many wonderful things in it. I mean, the idea that, that the Gulf states and the Arab and Muslim world should broadly be united in recognizing Israel and making the peace, putting aside the Palestinian issue, which would no longer dominate the agenda. That is a wonderful thing. But the worm in this particular apple is Qatar, the state of Qatar, which has always been an outlier as far as the other Gulf states are concerned. It's regarded as their enemy. Qatar is the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar is the state that has funded and supported and sheltered and advised Hamas and is still doing so. And Qatar is the state which, as the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, is the state that's most involved with subverting the West itself in order to be taken over by Islam. And as we know, Qatar has bought up huge amounts of Britain and of America and bought very large numbers of some of the most senior players in those societies to this infernal end of taking it over for Islam. Now, how can Qatar be part of a solution long term?
And they've been treated throughout this as some sort of, a broker, as opposed to the people who were harbouring the leaders of the terrorist attack. And again, this is not how we treated, the Taliban when they harboured Al Qaeda back in 2001. It's not how any other country is expected to treat them. You talk about actually, the long term, basically the tentacles of Islamist fascist extremism. I mean, it's this ideology across the Middle East, but also how its tentacles have reached into not just Britain, but across Europe and in America, particularly in universities, on campuses, I would say in our media, particularly the BBC, but pretty much most of mainstream media, I think, across the board. I just want to play you a quick video. You've no doubt, I'm sure you've seen this. This is of Samuel Williams. He was an Oxford University student, and this is one of the chants that he led at the latest supposedly pro-Palestinian march last Saturday. Have a watch and a listen.
I don't want to yap for too long, but a chant that we've been workshopping in Oxford that maybe you guys want to join in. It goes, Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground.
I mean, fairly typical of the sort of rather sad, pathetic, inadequate sort of incel, hate mongers that we've seen in our streets. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know that in the last hour or so we learnt that not only is Samuel Williams of Balliol College, Oxford University, a PPE student, supposedly our brightest and best, is now under police investigation. He's also now been suspended by the University of Oxford, who condemn what he had to say pending that police investigation. Is this at least the start, do you think, Melanie Phillips, of perhaps us basically taking on the blatant, outrageous hatred and death threats on our streets from these supposedly virtue-signalling good people?
Forgive my note of weariness. I do hope so, but I suspect not. I mean, this guy's suspension and investigation by the police is obviously very welcome. It comes after, even by the standards of sluggish people who are slow to respond to this kind of thing, it produced absolute outrage. The boy was calling for the murder of countless Jews. Now, that should have been dealt with immediately. The police should have been there immediately this was shown and arrested him for incitement to murder. And Oxford should have dismissed him, not just suspended him, thrown him out. Now, that's him, and that's a particularly extreme example. But unfortunately, although it's extreme, it's part of a trend in which we have seen, in the demonstrations on the streets of Britain for the past 2 years, people calling for the extermination of Israel and the death of Jews. Now, the death of Jews has been often dressed up in Arabic chants, but everybody by now should know what they mean. And the police have done absolutely nothing. Yep. And behind all that, behind, the British state standing back and saying it's free speech to incite the murder of Jews and the destruction of Israel, which are both crimes under English law. In addition to that, you have a situation in which this is against the backdrop of an entire, quote, human rights, close quote, humanitarian establishment, which has effectively turned mass murder into an issue of conscience. Yeah. This is the most terrible thing, that people are parading around, people of great ignorance, obviously, of the Middle East, great ignorance of Jews. Some of them may be, innately prejudiced against Jews, but many of them are simply ignorant, and they're going along with a sort of fashionable crowd. Yeah. But the humanitarian establishment, which people look to as the kind of arbiters of truth and justice and conscience, they have basically been painting the Israelis as not just wrong, not just behaving badly, but as evil, as demonic, people who deliberately cause the killing and starvation of babies, of children, of civilians. All of this is a lie, but put that to one side, the fact that it is a lie, it has incited people into the belief that the Israelis are fundamentally the most evil people in the world. Yep. Now, if you have that situation, it's not surprising that people are going to say, well, what do you do with people who are effectively Nazis? For that's what the Israeli Jews are being called. Yep. People who are evil, people who are demonic. You have to get rid of them. And so you have this innately, potentially murderous discourse, which has been framed as conscience and compassion and human rights.
And these are the good people. And then when you have, a prime minister who allows his MPs, even some of his own ministers, to talk about, again, fake stories, fake claims about genocide and the like. And then you have 2 men murdered at a synagogue for being Jewish. This is it. Melanie, I'm final brief word, but I'm going to have to go to a break.
This is the most disgusting thing about Keir Starmer. Not only is he
among the many disgusting things about Keir Starmer,
this mythical state of Palestine, whose existence and hypothetical existence is only to destroy Israel, he has done nothing to say that the incitement against Jews and Israel is based on a lie, and consequently, he is complicit in this near pogrom atmosphere in Britain.
I absolutely agree. Melanie Phillips, columnist for The Times, author of The Builder's Stone, How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. I'll get Claire Pearsall's reaction to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts, what she had to say. Get in touch. Any of the big topics we're talking about, 0344 499 1000. Don't forget, up soon, we will be getting to PMQ, see those first clashes of the new term between the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch. This is Talk.
group of women made a citizen's arrest. The person that they arrested was a man by the name of Mark Thurston, who is CEO of Anglian Water. These women, who are all part of this organisation called Citizens Arrest, surrounded him, held hands so that he couldn't escape. They were accusing him of up to 3 counts of public nuisance, focusing on environmental damage, illegal sewage spills, which pose a risk to the public's access to clean water, their failure to maintain equipment which leads to the spills, and mismanagement of funds following bill increases and Thurston's bonus ban.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:53 is the time. Claire Pearsall still with me, former Conservative government advisor. I have to say, I mean, I always find Melanie Phillips just so impressed. She's so clear. Yeah. The clarity is good. Now, you know, she doesn't play all softly. She's hard as nails. She's moved to Jerusalem. She's moved to Israel because she doesn't feel that Britain is a place, you know, as British born and bred, that she feels safe in. That is to me, and I know a number of people who've done that, people who are planning to do that, and she's quite right to point the finger at people like Keir Starmer, isn't she?
She absolutely is, and I thought that last part of your interview with her, where she said the blame lies with Keir Starmer, he's not called any of this out. And
he didn't call it out with Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party.
Absolutely, it's been a long ingrained problem in the Labour Party, but for her to feel so unsafe in the UK that she's moved back to Jerusalem, I think that's a real loss for the UK.
Oh, absolutely. And again, she's not the only one, and she, you know, that's a terrible thing. In terms of where we are with what's going on in Gaza, I mean, Donald Trump was very, very, very clear yesterday. He said in the White House, if Hamas don't disarm, we will disarm them, and it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. They know I'm not playing games. Well, who's we? Because he means Israel. But once again, Israel, the IDF forces and the Israeli government, they will get blamed. Now, the absolute number one issue for Israelis in the last years has been getting those hostages home. Yeah. But the second big issue is making sure that October 7th can't happen again. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So and that involves Hamas being disarmed and not being in control and having safe, secure borders. Well, you can't do that if Hamas is just sitting there controlling best part of 50% of Gaza, executing anyone they like. They're running around. I mean, they've been in a war for 2 years, barely seen a uniform apart from when they're actually delivering hostages to the Red Cross. Now they're running around in their uniforms again.
Well, of course they are, and I think that we would be incredibly stupid and naive if we thought that disarmament meant they would lay down every single weapon they had, because that isn't going to happen. It's never going to happen. They're always going to keep it. I'm a little concerned as to what Donald Trump means by we will, you know, I'm not going to take this lying down, basically, we are going to deal with them. Well, he's not sending American forces. He's not, and it's going to be the IDF who have had to fend off Hamas attacks, plus also those from Houthi rebels and others. They are the ones that take the flak, they are the ones that take the blame, they are the ones who are trying to keep the nation secure.
But it doesn't matter how many times Israel... I see stuff on social media all the time about, well, Israel broke the last few ceasefires. No, after Hamas broke the terms of the ceasefire. I'm sorry, they've already broken the terms of the ceasefire by not returning the dead hostages. They said during the talks that we don't know where all the dead hostages are, but they certainly knew where more than 4 were. They only returned 4 on the day they were supposed to return them. I don't know how much patience people need. So they don't know where all the dead bodies are. Well, okay, well then tell us whether. Okay, we'll send in diggers and we can get those bodies out. There are 2 reasons why people in Israel want the dead bodies home. It's obviously getting the live hostages is far more important. Of course it must be. But one, they want to give their family members a decent burial because we know that the mutilation of bodies, live and dead, on October 7th. People, the thought that we've seen, mums of children who've been killed that need to, the victims in the Moors murderers, they want to give their child a burial. It's that. But also, crucially, that hope against hope that they may actually still be alive, and finding out in 10 years' time that they're still being held somewhere in a tunnel somewhere. I mean, being tortured. That's why they need to know one way or the other. And we did see, the mother who I spoke to last week on October the 7th, and her son, Tamir, his body was one of those that's been returned, and she didn't know whether he was dead or alive. Hamas would have known whether he was dead or alive, but they didn't let her know. I mean, it's torture. Hamas are playing games, which is what they were always going to do. I think I was very, very happy to got the hostages back, but it seems to me, it doesn't matter how badly Hamas act, and it doesn't matter what restraint Israel shows. The people who go genocide, you're a baby killer supporter, or all this. It doesn't matter what happens, how bad Hamas is or how restrained Israel is, they will always blame Israel.
Of course they will. And I would like to gather up all of those individuals on the streets calling for Israel to not exist, and they think that Gaza's such a great place. Right, you go over there.
You go and keep the peace.
You go and deal with you go and keep the peace. You man the borders. Let's see how that goes, because those kefirs wouldn't last 2 seconds.
Yeah, and if you even remotely care about civilians in Gaza, look, okay, let's face it, 20 years ago they elected the Hamas, but, the vast majority of people in Gaza actually are too young to have been able to elect. They've got a huge again, for people who've been genocided, amazingly high birth rate. But would they still support Hamas? Likely they would. That's the worrying thing.
They don't have an alternative either, so they're seeing that as their only hope.
But it is also we wouldn't have allowed Adolf Hitler and the Nazis to stay in power in Germany after they were a threat to they took over Europe, were a threat to Britain, and then we were able to defeat them. We wouldn't have gone, well, okay, we'll just leave you in power. Why would Israel allow that? The peace terms, it has to be the full 20-point plan or nothing at all. Otherwise, Israel have the right to go back in. I do not understand anyone who questions that, because, my God, I'd rather be protected by the IDF right now than the British Army, and certainly under the leadership of Keir Starmer right now. Loads more to come. PMQs up next. First one of a new term. What will Kemi Badenoch ask Keir Starmer about? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. It's been, if I say so myself, largely because of the guests and the calls, a rip-roaring show so far. If you've missed any of it, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page. How could you find it? It's very difficult to find. We've called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you can hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. PMQs is just starting. The first one back after recess, and in just a moment, as soon as we get the first first question from Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader. We will go to those first clashes between the Tory leader and Keir Starmer. Joining me in the studio for reaction is Claire Pissell-Still, former Conservative government advisor, and also Peter Cardwell, talk presenter and political commentator.
Hi,
Good
Julia.
afternoon to you. Great to have you in the studio. I've missed you. Keir Starmer's already on his feet, answering always that rather pointless first question, and then the whole I've got meetings later today, blah, 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 blah. Lots to talk about. So we've got the economy, we've got immigration, what's going on in the Middle East, the China spy case. I have a funny feeling that Kemi Badenoch might do a little bit of Palestinian recognition and a little bit of China spy case. What do you reckon?
I think so, certainly. The Chinese stuff, obviously there's a statement yesterday, but there's a lot more to this, a lot of unanswered questions on why the Deputy National Security Advisor has been thrown under the bus on this. So
and it does seem that every single time the government makes a statement about something, it's then completely questioned by anyone else in the know. So it's not going very well
why
for them so far.
Why are they protecting Jonathan Powell? That's what I want to know.
Well, this is it. Jonathan Powell, of course, you know, I mean, putting the Blair band back together, Claire Pearsall. Yes. He was National Security Advisor, I think, what was it? Wasn't he to Cameron as well? But he was also, of course, way back when he was involved with the Blair government.
He was Chief of Staff in the Blair government.
Chief of Staff, he was. I mean, he's a hugely influential figure. But they clearly do not want this man to have to go because they've lost so many serious people, and yet the finger keeps pointing at him over pretty much everything that goes wrong in government.
Because the finger also pointed at him over the Peter Mandelson debacle as well. So his hands are not clean, and as much as he's an experienced person in government, he's also made a fair few mistakes in that time. So I think that it will be interesting to understand why it is they're protecting him. What is it that he knows that nobody else wants to get out? And I suspect there is some pretty deep dirt going on. Yeah, there's definitely something going on. There's no doubt at all. Well, we've got Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, looking absolutely furious right now, giving someone a very big telling off. So we were still waiting for Kemi Badenoch to ask her first question. There's no doubt at all there's a lot of pressure, Peter, on the government right now. Immigration. We've got Shwaba Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said a meeting of Balkan leaders today, basically admitting that we've lost control of our borders. We've got Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, sort of skulking over to Washington to the IMF summit after we've got some terrible figures on the economy. They're trying to talk them up, but basically you combine the two things: immigration, huge number of people, a couple of million more people arriving in the country, of low-skilled migrants, and our growth figures on GDP. Oh, what a surprise! We've got the lowest growth per head of the population in the G7, the richest countries. Things are not going in the right direction.
And then she gives that interview this morning where she says she's looking at taxes. Taxes may well rise.
It's not really a big surprise.
Well, it's not. But then she gets on a plane and goes to America before she can be asked any further questions. But yes, it's the first admission. We all knew it was going to happen, but it's the first admission nonetheless that taxes will almost certainly rise. I mean, they will rise in 6 weeks' time. And the question is, will she break the manifesto pledge? Will Rachel Reeves in 6 weeks' time contradict Rachel Reeves of a year ago? That's my question, because the budget is going to be very brutal for her. And can her credibility survive if she does?
What do you mean, can her credibility survive?
Can any credibility that's left survive?
Long. I mean, genuinely, it's actually embarrassing. I mean, you actually see her speaking, and I'm actually at the point, Claire, with Rachel Reeves, where I almost want to give her a hug. I mean, she's so bad and
Don't
so
cry,
useless
Julia.
and
Don't
so
cry.
in fact, don't cry. I do not cry. She's so out of her depth. I mean, again, you should at that point leave your job, but then hey, David Lammy's still in a job, so there we are. By the way, we should have perhaps, can we go live to the House of Commons, please? Can we just pretty much go to the House of Commons right now, please? Because the Prime Minister Keir Starmer has accused the Conservative Party of baseless accusations surrounding the government's handling of the China spy case, telling the House of Commons, "I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions." He says, "I know just how seriously rightly you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government. We will always defend against espionage. In recent weeks, there have been baseless accusations put about by the party opposite." Let's go live to what he's got to say.
I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I visited Rayner, a world-leading provider of cataract solutions based in Worthing.
Right, we've managed to miss that bit of the statement. We've now got the utterly pointless first question. We will leave it for now. But that's quite interesting, isn't it? To you, Peter, that the Prime Minister's come out fighting like that.
Yes, it is, and certainly in regard to what he is saying, he is being unapologetic in his words. It's interesting as well. Lindsay Hoyle has been very annoyed about this, the fact that this case was dropped. He says that parliamentary...
Because, crucially, it was about alleged spying in the Houses of Parliament.
By researchers, and there are all sorts of allegations they may have had apps on their phones that had them communicating with the Chinese. There's all sorts of problems that have annoyed an awful lot of people. From Keir Starmer's perspective, clearly the full picture is not out there. Not out there. His argument would be that it can never be, but also the Crown Prosecution Service, two former heads of the Civil Service, very annoyed.
OK, let's go straight back to the House of Commons. Kemi Badenoch's first question.
Thank you for marking 4 years since the terrible murder of Sir David Amess. I know that the whole House will want to join me in remembering our former colleague. He is very much still in our hearts and minds. The way he died reminds us that the security of members and this Parliament is paramount. So it concerns us all that the case against two people spying on members of this House has collapsed. It is simply unbelievable. Exactly as I expected, the Prime Minister had to be dragged out at the top of PMQs to give a statement that answers no questions. I don't know what they're laughing. I don't know what they're laughing at. We are talking about the security of this Parliament. He had to be dragged out to repeat only more obfuscation. It is simply unbelievable. It is simply unbelievable that he is trying to say the last government did not classify China as a threat. So I will refresh his memory. In 2021, the previous government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. In 2024, the Minister for Security said from that dispatch box that China poses a threat. But let's leave aside the government. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 in November classified China as a threat in his remarks. How is it possible that the government failed to provide the evidence that the CPS needed to prosecute?
The substantive evidence was provided in 2023 by the previous government. That is when the witness statement was submitted. I am going to disclose it. They will all be able to read it. The substantive evidence was written and disclosed and submitted in 2023 under the last government. I noticed she didn't indicate whether ministers were involved in that at the time. Mr. Speaker, she questions what's in the review, the refreshed review in 2021 and 2023. Let me be clear. The then Foreign Secretary, sitting I think over here, the Honourable Member for Braintree, 1 month after the arrest, so absolutely the relevant time, gave a speech at Mansion House. It was called Our Position on China, setting out the government's policy. He said in that speech, summing up China as a threat in one word would be, his words, impossible, impractical, and most importantly, unwise. Foreign Secretary, Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just him. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition was Business Secretary at the time. In September 23, the leader of the opposition said, her words, September 23, the relevant year, her words, we should certainly not be describing China as a foe. It's worth looking up the word foe in the dictionary, Mr. Speaker. She went, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't end there, Mr. Speaker. In September 2024, the leader of the opposition said this, I quote, I have shied away from calling China a threat. She is playing politics with national security.
The Prime Minister can read the beginning of a quote. Let me finish that quote. At the end of that quote that he just read out, I did describe China as a threat. But this whataboutery that he is doing neglects the fact that those spies were charged under a Conservative government. They were let off under Labour. He has not answered any questions. On Monday, Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Security Minister repeatedly told the House that ministers did not take decisions, that it was the Deputy National Security Advisor who had full freedom. Is the government seriously saying that only one man, the Deputy National Security Advisor, had anything to do with this failure? Is he seriously saying that the Deputy did not discuss with the National Security Advisor, did not discuss with the Home Secretary or with anyone in Downing Street? Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, let me explain why. Firstly, the case was charged under the last government according to the evidence submitted under the last government, which set out their policy decision. What was an issue in the trial is not the position of the current government, the position of the last government. And they carefully avoided describing China as an enemy because that was their policy at the time. Mr. Speaker, so far as the position under this government is concerned, no minister or special advisor was involved, and I will double-check this because I've had it. I will double-check this. So, Mr. Speaker, this is important. After the charging decision, the prosecution were very careful about who would then see the witness evidence. I will double-check, Mr. Speaker, exactly what instruction was taken. But I can be absolutely clear. No minister was involved. No special advisor was involved in this, and I'm assured as I can be that the prosecution was saying that it would be the witnesses only that were involved in short updates, the evidence that was submitted under the last government.
That's not good enough. Mr. Speaker, the end of the answer was different from the beginning of the answer. What on earth is the point of us having a lawyer rather than a leader as the Prime Minister if he can't even get the law right on a matter of national security? He keeps going to the CPS. The CPS have said that they are satisfied that they were right to charge in August 2024. The Sunday Times reported that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's national security advisor, convened a secret meeting to discuss the security consequences of the China spy trial. Did the meeting happen, or is the Sunday Times making it up?
Mr. Speaker, she's clearly not a lawyer or a leader. Mr. Speaker. The problem for her is I do actually understand the law. I know what's got to be proven. I've also looked at the evidence. That was put in under the last government in relation to this case. There was a meeting in September. That did not involve the National Security Advisor discussing the evidence in any way, nor, Mr. Speaker, one further piece of evidence. The final statement in this case was submitted in August 2025. There was no further submission of evidence, one way or the other, after any discussion in September. This is a red herring, a completely scurrilous allegation made by the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has now twice directly contradicted the words of his Security Minister. They cannot both be right. The chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee couldn't get any answers from the Security Minister. The CPS said that they were satisfied that the decision to charge the case in April 2024, not August, in April 2024, was correct on the basis of where the law stood at that time. This is a matter of fact. It is not a matter of what the previous government had thought. It is not a matter of it not meeting a legal test. It did. Something must have changed when the charges were brought and when the case collapsed. The charges were brought under us. The case collapsed under them. Can the Prime Minister tell us what changed and what collapsed the case?
Mr. Speaker, I've said I will publish the witness statements in full. The whole House will then see exactly what was set out in 2023 in the substantive witness statement and exactly what was set out in the two supplementary witness statements, and she will then realise what she's just said is entirely baseless.
Mr. Speaker, the CPS has said in the clearest terms that this prosecution was dropped because this government did not provide the statement they expected. Why should we believe a man who at the last Prime Minister's questions said he had full confidence in the best friend of a convicted paedophile. Forgive us if we don't trust a word he says. This all stinks of a cover-up. Given his statement earlier, will the Prime Minister publish today not just the government witness statements, but also the meeting minutes and all of the correspondence that he had with the CPS?
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. The only process I want to go through is in relation to some of the individuals in the statements to make sure they know it's coming out. I can assure the House there's no substantive delay here. I know it is of concern to a number of people, acute of concern to them. I will have the statements out in full. There is a bit of proper process I need to go through. The honourable member will understand why that's necessary. Then they'll be published in full. She asks about minutes, etc. There is a usual rules and process for government. But I remind her that the substantive issues in this case were discussed at meetings under the previous government. So they're asking me to disclose the discussions that they had in relation to the witness statement in the first place.
Mr. Speaker, you deserve better, and this House deserves better than the evasive answers that we have had from the Prime Minister. Even the former Cabinet Secretary, Lord Butler, has accused the government of being economical with the truth on this issue. The Prime Minister can't tell us why Jonathan Powell had a secret meeting which the Security Minister said he had no involvement in the case. He can't tell us why his government did not provide evidence that China was a threat. I suspect those statements won't prove it either. He's blaming his civil servants. He's blaming the media. He's blaming the last government. He cannot explain why he could not see this case through. He should have seen this case through. And let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, about what has happened. A serious case involving national security has collapsed because this government is too weak to stand up to China. And if the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country?
The case did not proceed because the policy of the past government did not meet the test that was necessary. That is the long and the short of it. Far from evading, I have said I will disclose the full witness statements that set out exactly what was in the witness statements, exactly what the subsequent statement says, and the allegation that somehow they were changed, that the first statement and the second statements are different, is completely and utterly unfounded. Mr. Speaker, it's a pathetic spectacle. Instead of taking responsibility for the fact they failed to update the law so this case could actually be the review, Mr. Speaker, 2015 was the review into the legislation. They took 8 years to change the law. Had they done that more quickly, this case would have proceeded. It was their failure, and they're just slinging mud. Meanwhile, we're getting on, Mr. Speaker, with renewing our country, new planning reforms, get rid of building, online hospitals for waiting lists, new opportunities for young people. Labour's building a better future. They can't even come to terms with their past.
Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Speaker.
what a set of exchanges we just heard there between the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch. There really is no love lost between those two at all. It was entirely over all 6 questions from Kemi Badenoch. Lengthy questions, some lengthy answers as well in the middle there from the Prime Minister about the China spy case. Let me come to you first, Peter Carbell, talk presenter, of course, Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government advisor, still with us as well. But Peter Carbell, I mean, it's an incredibly complicated story. We've got 2 men who've denied any allegations, being accused of basically working in Parliament, well, one working in Parliament and elsewhere, getting documents and handing them over to the Chinese. They've denied that. The case has collapsed. And the case has collapsed because, well, the opposition, many others, it appeared the Crown Prosecution Service, the current Director of Public Prosecutions, claims because the government didn't provide evidence that, well, China is a threat, because you can't be accused of spying for a foreign government threat if they aren't actually designated a threat. Labour claimed, Starmer has claimed, Security Minister, everyone within government has claimed, but that wasn't our fault. We couldn't provide any more evidence. This case was started under the Tories. The government, the last Tory government, didn't change the law soon enough, and we had no choice, not us gov. And as Kemi Badenoch's pointed out, they're blaming the last government, they're blaming civil servants, they're blaming the prosecution, they're blaming everybody. But did we learn anything new in those exchanges?
Not really. I think the thing we have learned is that the statements are going to be published, and those will be poured over in great depth. Who met who, when, what was in the statements, were the statements changed, and then when they were in the public domain, what did they show and what were they based on?
These are the statements that the Prime Minister announced this at the very beginning. These are the statements that were going to be presented to the Crown Prosecution Service. Here's the evidence that we have that this is an enemy state. Now, we've been told already by Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, who was referenced by Kemi Badenoch a couple of times on Monday, that she pointed out the Prime Minister twice directly contradicted what he'd had to say. Explain where, it'd be helpful if you could explain that. But basically that they provided these statements, but it basically came all from one guy, Matthew Collins, Deputy National Security Advisor, a civil servant, not a special advisor, not a political appointee like his boss, the Jonathan Powell, working directly for the Prime Minister. And that basically there's this one guy, and he's just putting the evidence together. Where was the direct contradiction for a start?
Well, certainly there was a big debate yesterday. There's a ministerial statement by Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister. There were no answers in regard to what's actually in the witness statements, what actually collapsed the case. We still don't know the exact answer there, and the statement should reveal that. In terms of the contradictions, there were also contradictions in regard to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Emily Thornberry, no great friend of Keir Starmer after he dumped her. She thinks she should have been a cabinet minister. She wasn't. She was trying to get answers on it as well. Some of the language Kemi Badenoch used as well, very, very interesting. There's no point in having a lawyer rather than leader when he can't keep us safe in a matter of national security. Having been in Manchester last week for a Conservative Party conference, I was a big Kemi Badenoch sceptic. I still am to some degree. But honestly, that speech last week and her performance at PMQ, she's come of age as a leader of the opposition.
It was an incredibly impressive performance. But he, of course, to that line, Prime Minister replied, she's clearly not a lawyer or a leader. He's doing that sort of thing when he does that painstaking sort of, oh gosh, this is all a bit beneath me. Why are people questioning me? And he was like this over the free gear Keir.
It's not a good look.
It's not. It's very arrogant. It doesn't come across very well. But he's basically saying, look, we're going to publish these statements, the statement that was being made. The Kemi Badenoch also asked for basically, I want to publish the meetings, the minute meetings, when these meetings that were apparently not a big deal, when we know they've been happening. Publish those, publish everything else. We're unlikely to see all of it, but do you think we learnt anything new? I mean, you can talk about who won and who lost, but this is actually about, as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, a very, very serious national security issue. This isn't over whether someone paid their stamp duty or not.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really serious issue. It is a very complicated process. There are a lot of moving parts on this, but essentially, no, today we've learnt nothing new. But what we have learnt is the Prime Minister putting out there that no minister was involved in any of this.
Or
and
special
advisor. Now, I think that is going to come back to haunt him, because you are telling me that the fate of a country and national security rests on one person, one unelected individual who you've thrown under a bus. It's all his fault that the country is run in a bubble. Because I, for one, know that's not true. Don't believe it, and neither is anyone else.
But also, again, this demand, we'll publish the minutes of the meeting so that as Kemi Badenoch pointed out in her third question, the Sunday Times reported that Jonathan Powell, his political appointee, special advisor and national security advisor, had a meeting in September, just last month, about this case, and Starmer basically admitted that there was a meeting. That's the first time we've known for sure there was a meeting, but he's claiming that none of the substantive details of that case were discussed. There was a meeting not discussing evidence in any way. He called this a red herring, a scurrilous allegation. Are we seriously expected to believe that the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor held a meeting in which this Chinese spy case that was discussed and did not in any way discuss the evidence? I mean, it wouldn't have been inappropriate to discuss the evidence because that's literally his job, but for some reason it wasn't discussed. That's just not going to hold,
it's not going to hold. I think it's a major blunder for him to have said that to Parliament. I think there are a number of things he said in Prime Minister's questions that are going to come back to haunt him today, but particularly on Jonathan Powell. He's
trying to protect
this is
Jonathan
Operation
Powell.
Save Jonathan Powell. That's what this is. That's what all of that was.
What photographs does Jonathan Powell have in his safe that we need to know about?
Well, we've seen this before. We've seen people from the Blair era Peter Mandelson, for example, who they've tried to save to a lesser degree, Tony Blair, in regard to the Gaza stuff, where they've tried to protect these people. It hasn't worked out for them. They've gone too far in all of this. Peter Mandelson, of course, a big mentor of Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff at Downing Street, Jonathan Powell as well. They're really... Keir Starmer needs to be ruthless in this, and he's got a blind spot, certainly when it comes to Jonathan Powell.
Well, he's ruthless, but again, he knows that it's actually damaging to him to lose. I mean, how many close members of staff and cabinet ministers can anyone lose in the first, 18 months of being in power? But this is the crucial thing: is we know Jonathan Powell. He's a serious player. He's a serious player. The idea he wouldn't have been involved in such an important, high-profile case, front page of newspapers, is risible. It's a joke. They're treating us like we're fools. Now he'll think probably, Prime Minister, well, I'm not publishing these minutes of this meeting. These are private minutes, private meetings. Here's the thing. There will have been civil servants these meetings. We've already had 2 former cabinet secretaries in recent years come out and defend this Matthew Collins, this the Deputy National Security Advisor who's been thrown under the bus. Apparently very well respected, very well liked, and basically don't try and blame your civil servants, which is basically what Keir Starmer often tries to do. They're not going to like that. We've seen them leaking when they've got a grudge against, a Brexiteer minister like, Priti Patel at the Home Office, where you used to work, Claire Pearsall. Come on. The idea that those meetings, those minutes are not going to slip out somehow, I think, good luck with that, PM.
I think you will see pieces of information coming out. And I also think that Keir Starmer will probably get round all of this by some of these minutes being quite heavily redacted. You can see the sort of front page of the Sun now. Yes. For reasons of national security, we cannot show you. Yes. Well, so I don't suspect that we will know everything, and I don't suspect we'll know it quickly.
No. There was a nice little moment before we go to a break where the Prime Minister, responding to accusations that Kemi Badenoch said early on, look, the previous government, you're blaming the previous government, and later on she says, and the media and the civil servants, but you're saying we didn't designate China as a threat, and that's why these charges brought at a time when China was not officially designated as a threat is our fault. But she's pointed out that actually there's plenty of evidence. The Director General of MI5 and others in 2022 referring to China as a threat. Prime Minister responded saying the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly at the time had said we should basically not describe China as a threat and not describe it as a foe. He even quoted Kemi Badenoch, then Business Secretary, saying I've shied away from calling China a threat, and then saying she's playing politics with national security. Kemi Badenoch flashing straight back with actually the end of that quote was, which is why it's a big deal that I am now calling China a threat. I mean, again, Prime Minister shouldn't say something like that if he doesn't know what the end of the quote is. That again, we know he doesn't read his...
It's the lack of professionalism, it's the lack of killer instinct. And actually, just a very small point, both Claire and I have worked in government, taking on the civil service, attacking the civil service in public. What we both know is that there are a heck of a lot more of them than there are of the political
and they know
class.
the bodies are buried. But also, here's the other crucial thing is one thing the public was that if Reform get elected, you know what, you're going to have to take on the blob, and you're going to have to take on the civil servants because you're going to do what you've been given a mandate for the general public to do. Keir Starmer hasn't got a mandate to basically save his own neck and his advisor's neck by throwing the civil service under the bus. As Kemi Badenoch said at the end, these are evasive answers. He's blaming civil servants, the media, the last government. This is a government that's too weak to stand up to China. If you can't protect members of this House, MPs faced with a spying threat, how can you protect this country? Prime Minister says it was a pathetic spectacle. Was it a pathetic spectacle?
I don't think it was a pathetic spectacle at all. I think Kemi Badenoch was asking a lot of very reasonable questions that we should have answers to. I think that's what she was doing. She was doing her job. She was opposing the government, and she was making clear that this has to be out in the open. Not all of it perhaps can be because of national security, but most of it can. And there are some basic inherent contradictions. It is very, very rare for 2 former heads of the civil service to essentially accuse the government of lying, and another one, Lord Butler, to criticise them as well.
Absolutely. Claire Pearsall?
Yeah, and I think it's a sure sign that the Prime Minister is rattled when he gets that really sanctimonious tone to his voice.
Oh, always.
The clipped speech. And
again, I can't believe I have to lower myself to answer these impertinent questions.
I'm explaining to toddlers kind of attitude that he has, and you know that he is going to be in trouble for this.
That's basically his... if he was playing poker, that's his tell. It's always his tell, isn't it? 12:31 is time. Your reaction to that, I'd love to hear from you. We're going to get your calls up, then we're going to be talking to Danny Shaw about where we are with huge numbers of police officers being sacked for, among other things, child sex porn, for goodness sake. We're also going to be talking to the director of Net Zero Watch about, the latest net zero nonsense. This is Talk.
group of women made a citizen's arrest. The person that they arrested was a man by the name of Mark Thurston, who is seen...
Vocabulary and word choice, Sarah Pochin.
Okay.
She is very good, blank, playing the piano. Do you think it should be in playing the piano, on playing the piano, or at playing the piano? She'll start for 10, no conferring. Sarah Pochin?
Do you actually believe this nonsense?
This is true.
That's
She's
not really
very
an
good
A-level
in.
English paper.
She's very good in playing the piano. What do you think the answer is? In, on, or at?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:35 is the time. Let's squeeze in a couple of calls. We were rather late with our conversation about rather detailed PMQs there with Claire Pearsall and Peter Carboy. Let's go straight to the phone line. So 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Graham is in Kent. Graham, good afternoon to you. What do you want to say?
Good afternoon, Julia. Yeah, two very quick points. I get very frustrated when people try to separate, is it the economy, is it the migration situation? They're all linked.
Yeah.
And we really shouldn't be sort of asking experts, well, about the economy. They're all linked, and they're, you know, and this...
All right, we were told we needed mass immigration because it would boost our economy, and our economy goes up a little bit, but not per head of the... because we've had so many immigrants. What a surprise.
That's quite true. And the other thing is, I've seen Prime Minister Question Time today. Kemi Badenoch has had some cut through with this guy Starmer, who obfuscates, and obviously he's very close to the truth on a few occasions. What I'd like to say is she's got to get a lot better in her job. The reason why I've negotiated with people across the country, she's got to be able to get him to take him off script, which he can't do. And the second thing is she's got to rough him a bit more. He doesn't like criticism.
No.
You see his face, and that's what I expect the leader of the opposition to do, because she's had plenty of opportunity to do this. We were talking about Mandelson, we were talking about Morgan McSweeney. They seem to have disappeared now. I want this guy to be held to responsibility for running this great country.
Absolutely. Here to that. You've got to put him on... He's got to put him on the back foot, because he really is bad at thinking on his feet, isn't he? Thank you so much for that call, Graham. Grace is in London. Grace, you wanted to talk about these pro-Palestinian marches, didn't you? What do you want to say?
Yeah, well, I'm grateful to you for having, on occasion, mentioned Sudan, and I really do wish that the people who are keen on marching to protest would consider raising awareness of crises like that.
And I'd be honest with you, I've barely covered it, because it's barely been in the news, even though far more people have died and are dying and will continue to die.
Yeah. And there are things that could be done to help, but they're not protesting for that. People aren't protesting for that. They're only protesting about a particular situation. And I'm not denying that what people in Gaza are going through is horrific, but it seems odd to me that only one place gets attention. And I think it's probably partly about anti-Semitism, of course, but I think it's not just that. I think that as human beings, to some extent, we have this kind of inbuilt instinct to want to be part of a group, a movement, a cause. It's kind of quasi-religious. I mean, for me, part of the reason I attend church is that I found that the evidence for God to me seems to be compelling. But people also go to church partly because we feel good when we're part of a community.
Yes.
And I think that in our secular society now, people are looking for that in other places.
Yeah, young people, whether it's climate change, and then it was the trans movement, and now it's pro-Palestine. And it's about we're the good people, we're on the right side, we're all together, and we've got a cause, and we can feel passionate about something.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not necessarily wrong, because it could be very good to stand up for important causes. But if one is not necessarily considering all of the outworkings of what one is asking for, or if one is more concerned about one's own emotions and groupthink than about the cause itself,
then the facts.
It might not be efficacious.
Yeah, and also you can really advocate for something without necessarily hating and wanting death to the people who disagree with you. It's an old-fashioned idea, but we used to manage to do it. Grace, fabulous call. Thank you so much. I'm going to race to another quick break because I want to get to Danny Shaw to talk about, well, some of those migration stories we've been talking about, but also why we have seen 730 police officers sacked in the last year. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:41 is the time. Let's go straight to Danny Shaw. He's a Home Affairs commentator. And Danny, thank you for waiting on the line. We have rather overran with our conversation about a very heated PMQs, but so much to talk to you about. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be there, Julia. Hi.
Well, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, was actually next to the Prime Minister today, but she's been speaking at a conference about with Balkan leaders about, well, basically security and why basically we don't have secure borders, but how the answer to that is working together internationally rather than turning inwards. But it's quite interesting to have her admit, basically, you know, our borders are not secure.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting statement from Shabana Mahmood. And I think what she is doing is trying to kind of lay the ground as the new Home Secretary, sort of setting out what the failings are and admitting the problems. You can't try and tackle the problems unless you acknowledge, you know, that they exist and that what they're causing. And I think it's a different tone to Yvette Cooper, her predecessor. And it's why I think Shabana Mahmood, you know, may have some credibility in that role, because she's not, you know, turning away from the problems. And she completely gets how if you can't control the borders, if you see every week hundreds of people turning up, you know, on the shores of Dover and so on, people look at it and say, well, you know, our borders are insecure, they're porous, and then we have to accommodate these people for months, if not years, while we determine if they're genuine asylum seekers or not. So I think correct to sort of lay out the challenge. The challenge for her over the coming months is to try and make some inroads in those numbers and to turn that talking shop of European leaders, the Western Balkans, invited to the summit today and so on, turn that into action rather than just talk.
Well, that's the thing. But I think the public have done with talk, haven't they? And it's two interesting stories related to both legal and illegal migrants. It's interesting. We've got illegal migrants, front page of the Sun, £260 million Serco deal for some centres for basic deportation centres near Gatwick, where basically these people are getting free arts and crafts lessons, IT lessons and English lessons before we try and deport them. I'm not quite sure why these people need English lessons. We're booting them out of the country. And at the same time, when it comes to legal migrants, we now know extraordinary stats regarding 1 in 6 universal credit claimants are migrants who come to this country, largely EU migrants who are here completely legally, who came here before Brexit and been allowed to stay and registered. But again, we've been told for years and years and years that mass migration is good for the economy. But if you've got 1 in 6 universal credit claimants are largely not working who are from abroad, that suggests to us that's not really the case.
Well, immigration, you know, went out of control under the previous government. We know that from the figures. And, you know, our infrastructure couldn't cope. Resources can't cope with that. GP surgeries, schools, hospitals, etc. And communities feel that, you know, if they're struggling and if they can't get houses, social housing, then they see people coming into to where they live, then that becomes an issue. And, you know, a lot of migrants who came here will be working, but of course, it's natural after some period of time. Some people will lose their jobs. Some people will need to get credit and so on from the government benefits, etc. I mean, it's a function of high levels of immigration, Julia. That's what the figures are showing. They're just another illustration of that immigration is too high and was unsustainable.
Indeed.
And the numbers, the legal migration numbers, will come down because of some measures that have been taken. And also the government's raising the English language requirement so that people...
It's A-level standard instead of GCSE as it's previously. I have to say, given that half of Brits can't manage GCSE English standard, we'll see how that goes. Just finally want to ask you about these latest figures from the College of Policing, which the BBC have got. The number of police officers dismissed from police forces across England and Wales has been revealed. It's 735 banned in the year to the end of March. It's up by about a quarter on what it was the year before. 21 struck off for child sex offences. They include dishonesty, discriminatory behaviour, unlawful access or disclosure of information, sexual offences or misconduct. I mean, this is a large number of people, but in the big scale of things? I mean, does this suggest that actually the police are getting their house in order and this is something that we should be welcoming or not?
I think the figures are an illustration that the police are cracking down on misconduct in a way that they haven't done previously. That's why the numbers have gone up, 24% increase year on year. I think that's what it shows. I think when you look at it as a proportion of the number of police officers across England and Wales, which is around 140, 145,000, it's a small proportion of that, thankfully. But clearly it is still a worry that you've got that many officers who are, committing offences or being found guilty of misconduct. But it's the reality, isn't it, Julia? You're not going to get 145,000 police officers and they're all going to be whiter than white. No. But I think the fact that, tougher action is being taken and there is now a barred list. If you go back 10, 15 years, there wasn't even a barred list where you could actually say to someone who'd been sacked by the police, you can't return and work for another force. So that is an improvement from where we are. But the figures don't necessarily reflect, I think, the fact that more police officers are committing misconduct and so on. I think it's probably a reflection that our standards are getting tighter, which is a good thing.
Which is absolutely good. I think Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator, thank you very much indeed for that. Claire Pearson used to work in the Home Office. What do you make of these latest figures?
I mean, it's always a worry when you see anything to do with police officers committing heinous crimes like that, because they should be
Wayne
the ones,
Cousins onwards.
Absolutely, they should be the ones upholding the law. But I think Danny's right. It does show that the police are trying to get ahead of the game. They are trying to sort out their own house before they sort out everyone else's.
Here's one other thing, just it comes down to this sort of brief. The government still hasn't managed to find anyone to chair this national grooming gangs inquiry. 4 months ago it was announced and we still don't have anyone, or even to head chair it, or even the terms of the investigation still being discussed by, we're told, a panel of stakeholders, including survivors of abuse. I mean, if you can't find anybody, I'll do it if you want.
As I say, I'll volunteer. I'll help set up the terms of reference. I've dealt with inquiries.
How is it this
previously.
hard?
It isn't. It isn't that hard. I just wonder if they're approaching people who they feel will be good for it and they have turned them down.
They're approaching people who they think are not going to basically hang Labour out to dry for the fact that it was Labour councils that largely allowed this to happen. That's the reality. Tories as well, but Labour councils in particular. We'll see. I'm sure we'll talk about that another day, sadly. 12:48's time. Let's take a quick break. And then we're going to talk about why Ed Miliband has approved the biggest solar farm yet in this country, despite concerns that the panels are made using slave labour in China. Oh, but remember, they're the good people. This is Talk.
Vocabulary and word choice, Sarah Potion. She is very good, blank, playing the piano. Do you think it should be in playing the piano, on playing the piano, or at playing the piano? She'll start for 10, no conferring. Sarah Potion?
Can you actually believe this nonsense?
This is true. She's very good in playing the piano. What do you think the answer is, in, on, or at? It's unbelievable, Mark, how even there's nobody, trust me, in your party that thought this was going to
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pistol's still with me, just the last few minutes of the show. Let's talk about the small matter of the mad net zero policies, partly to blame for the fact that our economy is in the doldrums that it's in. But the latest news, Ed Miliband has approved the biggest solar farm yet, the size of 1,700 football pitches, despite concerns that have been ongoing for many years about solar panels, pretty much all made in China, that they may well be made using Chinese slave labour. Well, let's talk about this with Andrew Montfort, who's director of Net Zero Watch. Very good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Hello, Julia.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I mean, I drove past a bunch of these solar farms the other day, and they sort of make me sort of my heart sort of sink because they're so ugly and they're just such a bad use of our land. But one the size of 1,700 football pitches?
Isn't it appalling? And of course, it's not just the solar panels. It's all the pylons to get the power to market. There's going to be acres of battery farms as well, and hundreds of square kilometres of wind farms as well. And of course, Ed Miliband is a fanatic, and he doesn't actually care about the British landscape. He doesn't actually care very much that they're made by slave labour either. What he cares about is his faith that what he's doing is correct and that he's got to keep doing it, regardless of how much pain is caused to people here or to people in China.
Yeah, and again, I'd like to point out that Ed Miliband and I, the Let's Destroy the Economy with Net Zero Secretary, and I have exactly the same qualifications in this field, which is a PPE degree from Oxford, and I can absolutely sure that I can also add up, and the numbers don't add up. I mean, you're right. I mean, this is like quasi-religious fanaticism that we see from him. But again, the Prime Minister ultimately is the person responsible because he can say no to this stuff. But this is even ignoring, because they're quite happy to ignore Chinese slavery concerns in the Labour Party because it's just not convenient for them when it comes to this. Even if we did have solar panelled over the entire country, we still wouldn't make a tiny, even iota of difference to the carbon emissions in the world. And this is interesting because we've had a letter today from those delightful folk that you and I love so well, the independent, completely unaccountable, unelected, appointed by the great and the good Climate Change Committee, who basically are the government's top advisors on climate change. These are actually a lot of them, again, no qualifications, no more than me in any of this stuff. They say that Britain must prepare for at least 2 Celsius degrees of warming, within just the next 25 years, so by 2050, rather than the 1.5 Celsius level most of the world has been trying to stick to under the 2015 Paris Agreement. Have we overshot? I mean, is it all over? Is humankind and the world already going to be destroyed? In which case, can we just give up now?
Well, no, the scientific evidence is that there has been very little impact of all the temperature rises we've seen. There's been no increases in floods, no increases in hurricanes, no increases in
sorry,
droughts.
Is it you saying that, or are there official figures to say
No, that is the official from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, table 12.12 of the Working Group 1 report, if you must know.
That's the kind of detail we're looking for.
Citation. People should go and look at that table. It's really interesting. Essentially, there is, for almost every meteorological and climate phenomenon you care to mention, they cannot detect a significant increase at all. So the idea that we're in some sort of a climate emergency it's a fairy story put about to frighten people. This is what religions do, if you like. You talked about Ed Miliband being part of a quasi-religion. This is what they're doing. They're trying to frighten people, and that way you can get them to do what you want.
Well, indeed, except people have woken up. I mean, and also, you've got, the Tory party now following the footsteps of the Reform Party, basically going, yeah, we're not really going to be playing along with this anymore. They play a little bit of, play a few words along the way, but they don't really think that this is going to fly. But here's the reality, though. I mean, look, we are coming out of a mini ice age, aren't we, from a few hundred years ago? So we are going to be getting slightly warmer. But the evidence, of course, is that even as the planet does get very, very tiny, slightly bit warmer, it is actually greening our planet, making it easier to grow more agriculture, and is a good thing for human beings and indeed animal and vegetation.
Absolutely, the Earth has been greening, and you can go and look at the UN data on crop yields. They're still going up. If we're meant to be in a climate emergency, they should be going down, but they break records almost every year. Now, people will say, but that's science. And I go, well, yes, it is science. It means we're adapting to climate change extremely well. There is no problem there at all. Yeah. You're right though. I think this is coming to an end now. I think we can see that the writing is on the wall for the net zero fanatics. They know it's over. Electricity bills, power bills don't need to go up for much longer for there to be utter chaos. And at that point, we will turn around. I'm sort of encouraged that we now have both Reform and the Conservatives talking about, maybe we should be ripping up these contracts. Reform have said they will rip up any new subsidy contracts given to wind and solar farms. That's great.
That bubble's going to burst.
Conservatives say they're thinking about it. So, I hope that this great big solar farm that Ed Miliband has just authorised, even with that authorisation, we hope that the investors will just go, this is not worth the risk. We will be closed down. We'll lose our shirts, and that they'll walk away now.
Indeed.
And that will be very good for consumers.
Well, it is people like you and Net Zero Watch who've been putting out that information and providing that very, very rare counter to the, abject nonsense that gets spouted on most of our mainstream media on this subject. Andrew Montfort, Director of Net Zero Watch, thank you so much. Of course, we're all in the pay of big oil. Honestly, I don't have time to do my show these days. The amount of checks I'm having to cash for big oil, big pharma, obviously, and big Israel. I genuinely, I don't even know why I bother coming to work anymore. I'm just so awash with all those checks for having views based on facts.
Yeah.
Old-fashioned, Claire, Fairson, old-fashioned.
Yeah, I think my bank manager wants to know where all those receipts are because I've not seen any of it.
On the Israel thing, I do keep asking. I've been told it's 7,000 shekels, or is it $7,000 or £7,000? Because one is £7,000, one is a couple and a half, one's like £2,500, and one is really £1,000. I'd rather be paid in pounds. Yeah. Are you allowed to request that when they're paying it? I
think you should.
I'm just saying, I just want to check those things. Anyway, my God, you never know these people. I am joking. But anyway, Ian Collins is here. He's also on the payroll. Ian Collins is here to tell us what's happening on his show.
Really? Do we get paid for this? I didn't know.
Apparently.
It never happened.
I know. I keep waiting for these sodding checks to arrive.
That's an invoice I better put in. Don't be so down on the whole kind of CO2 thing. The heat in this studio is like each day it gets hotter.
That's because Claire and
just saying.
We have the joy of the studio. It's great when you can have the aircon on full when it's very, very hot. But the studio basically alternates between being about roughly 30 degrees.
I know.
And about 15.
So I know this is like an inside story, but and it's not much of a scoop, frankly. But when you leave, obviously I turn it down. Yep. An hour later, there's a polar bear in the corner. It's absolutely.
I once did a show some while back when the aircon got stuck on full, and I'd been up since 4:30, and I had to wear my puffer jacket on air.